Good morning, Cape Town. Good morning, Cape Town. Good morning, Cape Town. How was your Valentine's? Ne? Okay, good morning. We're going to be starting in 6 minutes, just to also alert all of our line and all of our colleagues that are joining us online. And if there's any other colleagues that are still outside, let's just get them in. You have 6 minutes, 6 more minutes to get coffees, waters, and just to relax because we're going to be starting in 6 minutes. And once again, good morning, Cape Town. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The time is exactly 10 a.m. Exactly 10 a.m. Cape Town time, and we're going to be kickstarting the program as promised. Can we just get all of our colleagues to come back in because we are starting like right now. Is everyone comfortable and seated? Okay, looks like we've got everyone back in. And I'd like to welcome back everyone to day 2 of the Food and Beverages Manufacturing SETA Capacity Building Workshop. It's our last day in Cape Town, but we are not sad because we know we're going to be coming back soon. Once again, let's just acknowledge those that are joining us virtually, especially our board members of the Food and Beverages Manufacturing SETA, and all the SETA available stakeholders joining us physically and virtually from different parts of the country. Our Chief Financial Officer, Magugu Mapiwa, and oh, they're saying no sound. Tech team, apparently there is no sound. Can we please just sort that out? And then we're going to pause just for a second to make sure that everyone can hear us. Is the sound sorted out now? We good? Fantastic. We're just still thanking all of our available stakeholders joining us physically and virtually, and also our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Magugu Mapiwa, and other senior managers and managers joining us virtually from Johannesburg, our internal and external stakeholders, and all the men and women back in Johannesburg that are running the ship and chasing this elusive deadline that is giving us sleepless nights. So would like to acknowledge all of them. And then today, one more time, we are joined by Ms. Nokuthula Slamulela. She briefly, greeted everyone yesterday. Mr. Snayem Gidi, he's the Senior Manager, Learning Programs and Strategic Projects, who's going to be presenting today. Mr. Llewellyn Van Sale, Manager for Quality Assurance. Mr. Mkhupudi Pule, our Senior Manager for Finance, he's going to be joining us virtually. In the age of the fourth industrial revolution, we must just make sure that we're able to connect with anyone from anywhere in the world. Ms. Samgelisiwe Pungula, she's Manager for Monitoring and Evaluation. She's here physically. Mr. Raymond Ramaru, who's in absentia, unfortunately, and Ms. Nozibongo Socishe, she's here today, and she's made sure that these past 2 days actually come together. And Ms. Caroline Gamedo, who's also supporting that team. We're still on the same theme. That is the theme that we're going to be driving the whole of this year, and probably for quite some time until we feel like we're all capacitated. Expanding access to quality skills development programs in the era of the fourth industrial revolution for the food and beverages manufacturing SETA is still the theme that we're driving with. And our promise to you, like I said earlier, is we do promise to return. So do not despair, do not cry for us, Argentina. We will definitely come back quite soon to see you. And then just to get the other nitty-gritties out of the way, those are our social media handles, and that's the hashtag for these workshops, where we encourage you to follow us on our social media platforms, because that's where a lot of the other information that you might miss gets picked up. In fact, the gentleman that I called out yesterday that was at the AGM, he did say if he wants information, he sometimes gets it on our social media platforms. So we encourage you to please just, follow us there, because there's tons of information. It's a very active social media presence for the SETA. And without much further ado, I'm going to call once again Ms. Nokuthula Slamulela, the Chief Executive Officer of the Food and Beverages Manufacturing SETA. She's going to recap day 1 and almost recap also what's going to be happening today. So please let's welcome Ms. Nokuthula Slamulela.
Good morning, everyone. Are we still alive? Perfect. Okay, let me sort. No, what am I doing? Perfect. So yeah, welcome back again to our second day of the capacitation workshop in Cape Town. Glad to see that you survived and you're back. And I hope that you learned as much as you could yesterday. I know it was information overload, but I saw how interactive you were with our team, asking questions on our processes, giving us ideas in terms of what is working and not working. I picked up a few things yesterday in terms of some programs that you're interested in, and we are going to go back to the drawing board and check how we can fund that. Example of that, there was a lady who spoke about RPL, and some guy wanted to understand the criteria and the processes of getting RPL. RPL is one of those programs that we've had issues with in terms of stakeholders and employers taking up those learning program grants. However, I think we need to resuscitate that as well. As a SETA, we concentrated more on the artisanal RPL versus the learnership RPL, but in the next APP, we will consider that. I believe that my team spoke to you about the grant funding process, or the grant application process, how you apply for grants. They indicated that you have to apply during the open funding window, which is still open right now. I'm hoping that this capacitation workshop has triggered interest in you to really apply for these grants. Because the only time we will open the funding window is now. It is very rare. In the past 2 years, we have not opened a second funding window. And the reason is because we have had an influx of applications from the stakeholders, from our employers for these grants. So we normally get more than what we can afford and approve more than what we can afford, but allocate what we can afford. So I'm just highlighting again that I am encouraging you, our stakeholders, our employers, SDF, to apply for these grants during the funding window, which is closing on the 28th of February. So as indicated yesterday, the system, all applications of grants are done online. So we do not accept any manual applications. You can imagine how that is going to affect our processes if we had to take manual applications. So we only accept applications that are online using for now it's Indicium. I think it's going to move to SIMS going forward. And I had some of you highlighting the challenges we're having with the system, and I believe Solo Growth is going to make sure that all those glitches in the system that you're experiencing at the moment are resolved. We go through a serious process of evaluation. We check for compliance in terms of that you've got accredited training providers for accredited courses or for accredited qualifications. We also check that you are not having any learners that are behind schedule without giving us reasons why they are not completing those learners, because as a SETA, we've got targets of entering and completing the learners, and completing the learners is certificating them so that they can at least use those qualifications they've received through these the training that you're doing or you're conducting to them. So it's quite important that learners should not be behind schedule without proper reasons why. That forms part of our evaluation, and we're very strict in ensuring that not more than 50% of your learners are behind schedule. Also, we look at if you're a levy payer, that you've paid for your levies. If you're a non-levy payer, that you are exempt from paying levies. And if you do not know how to apply for an exemption, you need to go to SARS and apply for an exemption from them as a non-levy payer. However, you can also ask your accountants or your auditors to give you an exemption certificate. It's almost like writing an affidavit indicating that you are not supposed to pay levies. We also look at other things that are quite important in terms of the evaluation process. And those, I think and believe that Nxumisa and Heidi spent a considerable number of hours talking to you about them. But like we said, we are here for you even today, so that if there are any further questions that you might not have thought about them yesterday, and when you were at home recapping the day, you had some questions in your head, please do ask them today. We are here to serve you, and we are here to answer those questions. We then, once all is done and we award and provide you with an award letter, we expect you to sign a contract, and that's the contract between us and you, highlighting the terms and conditions, the number of the learners that we're funding, and the amount. There are those who would say, we've got capacity to take more learners, can you take more learners? Unfortunately, we cannot take more learners if you did not apply for them. So if you apply for hundreds, we'll give you hundreds, or we'll give you a lesser number, depending on obviously the availability of funding, but we can't give you 150. So we will not give you or award you more than what you applied for, even if you've got capacity. Then we also request that you please provide us with learner agreements. There are some of you that have had side chats with them where I'm pleading humbly that you provide us with contracts and learner agreements, and all these must be signed by the relevant parties, because without them being signed by the relevant parties, we are not going to be able to register those learners. And so once all that is done, we start paying your tranches. Today you will meet Mokgopodi Pule, who's our senior finance manager. He'll be telling you about how much money we have in the bank, and I can assure you we do have funding in the bank, as in we have cash and cash equivalents in the bank that are due to you as our stakeholders. But for us to be able to pay you, we need you to provide information, we need you to train our learners, and we need you to complete our learners. So, but he will tell you in terms of how much surplus we've got and how much is committed and what you need to do to ensure that we spend this money. He will even tell you how much we have to spend is over 100 million before the end of the financial year, which is 31st March. And we are not saying this because we're just boasting about the money we have. We're not a banking institution, so we do not need to have this money in our bank. We are indicating this so that you can go back to your employers. If you're an SDF or a training provider, or if you're an employer, you must just look at where you are with regards to implementing training. But we do have funds that are sitting in our bank that we can't disperse because of the information that is lacking. I know that back in the days, because I've been with the state for quite a while now, we used to have challenges of information that was getting lost or not being actioned. I think we have mitigated that risk sufficiently. Maybe we're still lacking here and there, but I don't think I'm getting as many escalations of repeats and requests of same information over and over, because I think we are more online than anywhere else. So those are the things that you need to be aware of, that we do want to pay you and we would really like to pay you, but help us pay you. So that's the grant application process. And then the team, we were researchers, spoke to you about what our hard to fill vacancies, those are the vacancies that take at least 12 months or more to fill. And I'm not going to go through each and every one of them because I believe Lysanda spent a considerable number of time talking to you about these vacancies. So what this means is that you need to somehow help us fill this gap by upskilling our people so that these vacancies are not as hard to fill as they are right now. And then from a sector skills plan, our priorities, and those are the 5 priorities that we have. So when you talk about priorities, we put more funding towards these programs. So your career guidance programs, we put a lot of efforts and funds towards capacitating our learners with regards to what skills are there that are required by the sector, what are the scarce and critical skills, what are the hard to fill vacancies, what are the skills of the future. I spent time yesterday in the morning telling you what the future is looking like. There is a lady who was worried about that in terms of that there could be job losses. But I'm not saying there will be job losses. I'm just saying be cognizant of the fact that the world is moving and move with the times. I am not, I don't have a crystal ball to tell you that in the next 5 or 10 years, this is what's going to happen to the jobs. But I can tell you that the skills are changing and evolving. So rather prepare yourself now so that when the world changes and the world of work changes, you at least are capacitated with the skill that is required in the future. There's no need or there's no point of us continuing training our people for a manual world when the world is moving towards the digitalization. But we're not saying that all skills will be extinct, we're just saying some will be. So prepare yourself, understand what those are, and that's why we spent time talking to you about them yesterday. And that talks to also the skills gaps in the sector and how we are closing those gaps through different funding models. We also are trying to transform our industry and ensure that we are capacitating all people. It's not just Black Africans, we are capacitating everyone. The program that we are funding at GIPS took 30 sector-specific people. It included training providers, included small business owners, included employers, employed executives who are taking on an executive program and a management program, which is an internationally based program, and they are going to be exposed to different countries. I think we're going to India, Paris, Thailand, and Germany, so that they can be exposed to what the world is doing out there in terms of the manufacturing sector. And it took people from all types of demographics. However, the focus is on African females and also on colors and Indians, so those who are historically disadvantaged. I apologize, I think the phone is ringing. I suppose house rules did not apply to the owner of the phone, and those house rules are that we must put our phones on silent. We've got a rule in the office that if you don't have a phone on silent, we charge you 100 Rand. So the owner of the phone is going to be charged 100 Rand, and it might be me. so that is bad, and I apologize for that. And then we also have to address the shortage of artisans in the sector. We highlighted that I think about 67% of our funding goes towards development of artisans. We need your millwrights, we need your fitters and tenors and electricians and other artisans in the sector, and we put a lot of funding towards that. We've got an open funding window now for special projects that Sinai is going to talk to, where he's talking about centers of specialization. Centers of specialization are your TVET colleges that are specialized in developing certain types of artisans. There's a few of them that are accredited, and we do that as a special project because it's a specialized field. So we want you to apply for those programs because we do have funding for them. And then we obviously need to improve quality of our learners in terms of matriculants that are entering the sector. We have funded on a special basis some of our young people who are doing grade 8, I think, grade 10 to grade 12. I studied when there were standards. So now I think it's grade 10 to 12. In terms of maths and science, because those are the people we need, and we are providing extra tutorial lessons to them, and also we provide them with bursaries. We're doing this with #1 province, which is Bloemfontein, Free State, through their education trust. I think they are improving significantly, and then we provide 100% funding towards learners for bursaries, unemployed learners. We also, by the way, do fund the employed in terms of what I think people do not hear, we will charge you 100 rands before you leave here, and you're not going to be able to leave this room unless you pay. And because Cape Town is so expensive, maybe we will up that to 1,000. So be very careful about your phones. And then through research, you got to know how to fill vacancies, you got to know what skills are required. So we spend an amount, like a significant amount of money doing research so that we can come back to you and tell you what you need to know in terms of our sector. And we've got a partnership with University of Johannesburg currently who are helping us research all the information that we shared with you here yesterday. I'm not going to go into detail with regards to the criteria. I think that was covered yesterday in terms of what is required, but you just need to make sure that you have paid your levies, you have fully paid your levies, you complete an application form, which is your annexure 2. It's what you used to call WSP, ATR, pivotal plans, pivotal reports. You need to highlight to us and prove to us that we have trained at least 50% of what we had planned before so that we can get funding. We still, I think in other regions, the one thing that I forgot to touch base on, that we all haven't touched base on, is the Busa case, which is the case about increase of mandatory grants from the 20%. I unfortunately don't have much information on that, and I think it's still sub judice. We're still waiting for the lawyers to complete their negotiations and the minister to give us a directive. So for now, we're still paying 20% of the mandatory grants until we are otherwise instructed to pay a different amount. So, but like I said, it's quite important that you at least implement 50% of the training that you had planned before. And our SIC code as food and beverages manufacturing sector is SIC code number 9. We've got about 12 subsectors. We've got 5 chambers, and all those have to do with production and processing of food. Then I also believe everything was highlighted in terms of what really do you need to submit for you to obtain mandatory grants. Very important for you to have access to discretionary grants, you need to have submitted your mandatory grant if you are a levy payer. I'll say this, if you are a levy payer, you need to have completed your mandatory grant application, which is an extra 2, so that you can have access to discretionary grants. If your mandatory grants are not submitted, you cannot have access to discretionary grants. And I get a lot of queries and requests, frantic SDF wanting to get their discretionary grants, but without submitting their mandatory grants. But that's for levy paying. For non-levy paying, you do not have to submit your mandatory grant application. We do encourage you, though, to submit them so that we can get the information in terms of our research that we need, so that we can understand better what skills are required in the small industry or small businesses and what interventions you would like us to fund. The deadline for submission of mandatory grants is on the 30th of April. It will seem it's a Sunday. Let me say this, we don't work over weekends. People do work, but we work from Monday to Friday, official business times. However, if the deadline is on a Sunday, because it's regulated, there's nothing we can do about that. We will close on that Sunday. But it's the system that's closing on the Sunday. So avoid submitting your application forms over the weekend, and then you get stuck, and there's no one to help you. Because I can't promise that there will be somebody to help you over the weekend. But I can promise you that there will be somebody to help you between Monday and Friday during office hours. So please help us help you and submit these before the Friday of the deadline, which is the Sunday, the 30th of April. Deadline is just the date of submission. However, submit before then, before the system acts up. You know how these things are. The system just fails when you don't want it to fail. So I really request that you do submit. Should it happen, Should it happen that you foresee that you might not be able to meet this deadline, please submit your request for approval to submit on the 31st of May, which is 1 month after the deadline. Please submit it. I think, Snaye, is it on the 11th or the 8th? Okay. On the 8th of April is the last day that we will receive request for extension applications. I do receive letters for extension of applications, and what is important in there, you need to give us valid reasons why you cannot submit on the 30th. So don't just send a letter and say, please, I request for an extension to the 31st of March without really, or 31st of May, apologies, without really giving us reasons, because we need to understand, because it delays the finalization of the process of approval of grants if we wait for people on the 31st of May, and then delays everything else. So it's got a tripling effects when you delay the submission of these requests for an extension. I think the team spoke so much about that you need to submit these forms. I will also talk to it just now and highlight why we are so focused in telling you that you need to submit. However, who's eligible for discretionary grants? Mandatory grants, of course, the levy payers, they are eligible as long as they submit their Annex 2 that will be approved. The only time you're going to get mandatory grants if we approve your application form, and the only time we're going to approve your application form is if you train and implement at least 50% of the planned training that you had. Otherwise, everyone and anyone can get discretionary grant. The basis is that you must, however, be training those who are in our sector. So the beneficiaries of training must be the people who are in our sector. So I can't train lawyers, nor can I train civil engineers. I can, however, train those who are in the food and beverages manufacturing sector. So please, we have got 21 seaters, and each and every seater has got a sector that it's responsible for. We are responsible, especially for the guys who are new. I'm hoping you're hearing me, that we are responsible for the food and beverages manufacturing sector. So we want to train those who are in our sector. As long as you registered as well, there are obviously requirements for you to be eligible. So it's not an automatic eligibility, but you need to have applied and provided all the information that we require. And I believe that Heidi and Misa spoke to you at length yesterday about what information is required. I have highlighted that we are closing the discretionary grants on the 28th of February. Don't get confused by the dates. The 28th of February is the closure of discretionary grants for the following financial year. So we opened the funding window early this year because we have hit the call where you, as our employers and our stakeholders, have complained about the time it takes to get your your discretionary grant application forms approved. And also us opening the funding window late. So we've opened the funding window early enough so that we are able to approve these on time, we are able to recruit and register learners on time, so that we also do not run around like headless chicken, quota for help, asking you, begging you to give us learner agreements and contracts. We are hoping that the change in the opening of the funding window will assist all of us implement training early enough. And like we say, we're saying submit, submit, submit. You'll be surprised the emails I get after the closure of the period, when people receive letters that they did not even submit, they are not approved. We don't communicate with you if you didn't submit, because I do not know that you applied. I know that there's a improvement that is required from our side in terms of communication and communicating your whether you're successful or not. But if you didn't submit an application, there's nothing to review. I mean, it's just As simple as that. So if I don't have your application, we cannot evaluate it. So please don't send me emails shouting and screaming, telling us that we should have seen that there's the application hanging in the system. It's not our job to go and look at the system and check whether you submitted or not. It is your responsibility and your job to submit these forms. And there's nothing I can do to help you. We get audited on these processes, and when we get audited, you hear a lot of noise about irregular expenditure from public entity. I'm a public entity, and if I do something that is outside compliance, whether it's regulatory compliance or compliance to our own policies and procedures, then it results in irregular expenditure. So you can imagine, if you don't submit a form, you don't submit on time, you call me, you send me emails, you text me, you do everything you can, there's absolutely nothing I can do. So I beg and humbly beg you, and I will reiterate that submit the forms on time. If you've got issues, you need assistance, we are here for you. We are also here to address any challenges of the system that you might have. So it's quite important that you engage us. But don't engage us on the weekend of the 28th or of whichever dates it's closing, because it will be very, very late at the time, and probably we will not have time to help you. So having said that, I thank you for joining us. I know that I need to do a vote of thanks later, but I thank you for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedules to come and listen to Food and Beverages Center, capacitating you on processes that you might or might not have known. Some of you, this is a refresher. Some of you, this is new. Some of you want to understand what opportunities are there. When I had lunch yesterday, I was sitting with a lady, and she said she just wants to understand what opportunities are out there in the SETA space. There's a lot of opportunities in the SETA space for you to capacitate our learners. And these opportunities, you can only get them through understanding our processes, because we do have a process that we need to follow. So you coming here to join us on these 2 days, 2 days out of people who are self-employed. I say self-employed because you probably are running your own businesses, or maybe you are employed by our companies. I do not know who's here, but it's a lot. But it's a lot for us as well, because we have to leave Joburg to come here. And yes, we will have offices in Cape Town. However, everything now is very virtual, and there's technology that makes it possible. So there's a gentleman who asked yesterday that how can we help you when you need to comply? We're literally a phone call away, we're an email away, whilst we do not have offices here. But we are planning on having an office in the Western Cape and other regions in the just near future, where then you could be able to walk in. But for now, we are here to help. And if you do not get assistance, there's an escalation process. And that escalation process is that you need to talk to the senior managers. As they present, they keep on giving you information and who is who in Food Bev Center. So just drop them an email. Please, I want to communicate with you, and I want to be there, and I want to talk to everybody. But you can imagine how many emails I get in a day. So please avoid escalating things to me without really getting assistance from the senior managers first. They are my gatekeepers. I'm very accessible, but I'm not always there. So if you need assistance from me, please just make sure that at least you've given an opportunity to my team that is a very capable team to work with you in resolving a problem. You will find that you get quick assistance quicker if that happens. But I can assure you that when it comes to my office, you will still get assistance. I'm just humbly asking that give the senior managers that work with me an opportunity to help you. We will now ask Mr. Mgidi to join and tell you more about partnerships and what is the difference between partnerships and normal discretionary grants. And then after that, I think there will be Llewellyn who will talk to you guys about quality assurance processes, what is happening in the changing world of QCTO. And we will also get Miss Samke Pungula, who's joined us. Both of them joined us yesterday. The other team left because we are rotating in terms of being here and then out of the office. As you know, there's a lot of queries that are happening in Q4. So the other team that was here yesterday has gone back to Joburg, so they are joining us virtually now. And then we brought another team. So that's how important you are. We're bringing basically everyone. And then we also wanted you to see them, just in case you've never met them before. So Samke will talk to you about monitoring and evaluation, what we do when we do site visits, what do we do when we do due diligence, because those are the processes that are part of implementing discretionary grants. And virtually, we will have Mr. Mohopodi Pule, who's our Senior Finance Manager, who will talk to you about funding, the amount of money we have, what we can do or what you can do to assist us disperse it. We do have a target of several millions where we need to pay you. So if you're listening, whether you are listening virtually or you're here physically, please take note of that because we want to pay you. We definitely do not want this money in the bank account. It serves us no purpose because we are not mashonisa or anything, so we're not going to do anything with it except pay for skills development. So those are that's the team. I think today we will not keep you the whole day. I'm hoping that by lunchtime around there, we will be complete with, we will have finished, but depending on the questions, of course. So you are still allowed to ask the questions you need to ask, clarity-seeking questions, whatever questions you have. I saw in the afternoon, which is normally a graveyard shift, there was so much activity, there were so many questions, people wanted to know more. I'm hoping that today, again, that will happen. Most of the time, people get very interested in understanding partnerships. Partnerships are some of the ways of us engaging and capacitating the skills, but on an innovative level, on things that we would not necessarily fund using DGs. So if you are looking at partnerships, you must then indicate to us why this is a partnership, on what contribution you are bringing to the party, because it's a partnership. Two people must get together to form a partnership. So with that, I will allow the program director and Naya to come to the floor and just capacitate you on partnerships. I thank you.
Good morning, Western Cape. Good morning, Cape Town. Shine, Cape Town, shine. Thank you. I can see that everybody's there. Good morning, colleagues, and it has been indicated and as reflected on the slide, my name is Sinaye Mkiti. I'm the Senior Manager, Learning Programs and Strategic Projects. And my colleagues yesterday have covered the part of learning programs in terms of the mandatory grants and the discretionary grants. And like the CEO has indicated, I'm going to present the strategic projects or the special projects in that there is a difference in terms of our normal discretionary grant as compared to our special projects. But even before that, through UCO, allow me just to emphasize something that, colleagues, we are at a time wherein we are finalizing the implementation of our 2021-2022 discretionary grant. And as it is, quite a number of entities who've got the allocations for discretionary grant, we have since not received their contracts back, or where contracts has been received back, we did not receive the required learner agreements documentation. And to that effect, I've even requested or prepared a letter for our senior manager, stakeholder relations, to send out to all our stakeholders, because I also realized that there's quite a number of our stakeholders who are struggling with the online application system. And on that note, those we will be allowing them, if you completely have got a challenge in that regard, we will allow those to send their documentation or learner agreement forms and everything through the We transferred to the dedicated email address which is covered in the letters, so that we can assist you with that part of capturing and registering your learners. So actually the due date was as in last week, but if you still got those, please make it a priority so that you don't forfeit the allocations which you've already got, because there are people or entities who require it, but they might not have that opportunity to have that allocation for the discretionary grant. Thank you. Having said that, I will just indicate my presentation outline in terms of the areas that I will be covering. The first one is, what are strategic partnerships? Like we've indicated, what do we regard as partnerships? That's my first area to outline and unpack. Secondly, who can participate in partnerships? And thirdly, special initiatives to be addressed by the partnerships. And then I'll also re-emphasize the key entities for partnerships. And the very same entities that were highlighted yesterday, they do qualify, but I'll go into much details. Then the beneficiaries, in respect of who do we target as the beneficiaries for the partnerships, and just to indicate, to say ideal partnership model and successes. That's where I'm going to indicate to say what are the areas that you should be focusing on when you want to enter into a partnership with the food bev sector. Then, having said that, what we refer to as strategic partnerships, those are key initiatives for ensuring that investments in any skills driven by demand within the food bev sector. So what is important in this regard, colleagues, is that when we enter into a partnership, for us to say it is strategic, we want to ensure that in that particular partnership, there will be a return on investment. A return on investment within the food bev subsector, a return on investment nationally as well. So we will be looking into, if we go into a partnership, we want to make sure that there will be a return on investment. But this should not be any other investment as covered in the discretionary grant. It should be something more innovative. And in that regard, two things that we'll be looking into to say the partnership, for it to be strategic in the first place, it should be responding to the following. It should respond to the strategic needs as identified in the food bev sector strategic plan. In other words, colleagues, you cannot start and prepare your partnership and want to partner with us if you did not read the food bev sector strategic plan, because your proposal, if you want to partner with us, it should respond to our strategic plan. Secondly, for a strategic partnership, to ensure that it does have a return on investment, it should also respond to the food bev sector skills plan. Remember yesterday, Lysander did take us through the hard to fill vacancies and any other areas which are in demand. But in particular, you might have taken note of the change drivers. So it's important that if your partnership, for instance, you want to enter into partnership with us, it should be responding to some of the areas of the change drivers, because the change drivers are the ones which informs our subsectors and generally, so in terms of what direction to take, what are the new emerging skills. For instance, in this case, the emerging skills are more related to the fourth industrial revolution, as alluded by the CEO and Lysander yesterday. So very important. If we say this is a strategic partnership, it should be addressing those. So you can make a tick box out of yourself when you do this and do your proposal and ask a question. Did I respond to the areas as outlined here? If the answer is no, then you are not in the right direction in terms of what you want to partner, the areas you want to partner with us. Then in terms of who can participate in the strategic partnership, colleagues, I won't dwell much into those ones, but it's a levy and a non-levy paying organizations, government entities, and like as well, it's not that like just because you are a government entity, like Nomisa was saying yesterday, it should be something that you are addressing within our sector, or is a innovative initiation which is more into our subsector. Is very important, and obviously it's entities in the food and beverages manufacturing. And once more, that partnership, colleagues, is it addressing a challenge within the food bev sector? And I won't go into it. The CEO alluded very clearly that there is a value chain wherein we as food bev sector, we are in the middle. On the other side, you might find out that it's areas that are related to agriculture. But then from agriculture, the next part, it will be us as food bev sector, wherein we took over the process from agriculture in terms of food processing. Then once it's over from us, maybe it can go to the shelves at the wholesalers, wherein now that particular partnership or it will be covered by the wholesale and retail sector. So do make sure that whatever you want to respond to or we want to partner with us, it's in the space of manufacturing. There's machinery which is involved in that part. If it's, for instance, is to do with cooking, it's not just cooking, but it's at another level where you produce in bulks so that you can supply to the wholesale and retail sector. Very important, special initiative to be addressed by strategic partnerships. Like we indicated that we are responding to the National Development Plan, colleagues, and my colleagues yesterday did even touch on that aspect. But when we enter into a partnership with you, just make a tick box as you do these partnerships and say, will this respond to economic growth? Because we know that the South African economy currently is really struggling for it to grow. But as using the skills, we need to respond to those areas to say, once I've got this skill, once we've had this partnership, we should be getting some levels of economic growth. Secondly, it should encourage employment creation. We know that over the past year or so, our unemployment has increased up to 35%. So one of the things to look into, this initiative that I'm bringing on board, is it responding to, is it addressing employment creation, or is it going to assist the particular individuals or entity to create their own jobs? So that's another thing which is important. And lastly, is it enabling social development within our communities? Those are some of the things, key things, colleagues, as as you want to partner with us. Please do look into those areas. Colleagues, I'm saying this because as what I'm presenting here is more or less for you the framework or the template, so that you cannot, so that your proposal, if you want to partner with us, it can be meaningful. So please do make sure that these special initiatives to be addressed in one way or another, your proposal or your intention to partner with us, it does respond to them. Then broadly so, in terms of the type of entities and for what reasons do we partner them with, they are indicated. It's just unpacking them in more details. But what we are bringing up even more clearer here is the fact that from the bottom, we do have partnerships with universities, TVET colleges, Center of Learning. Like my colleague indicated yesterday, unfortunately, we are more biased towards these government entities as opposed to the private learning institutions. Then we also partner with government departments in terms of facilitation of skills development, provision of sectoral data and plans. We do partner with government departments. And we also partner with employer associations, professional bodies, as well as the labor federations and trade unions. I know yesterday we did respond to this, and my colleagues did indicate that if you happen to meet them at the streets, our labor unions, please do make them aware that we do partner, we can partner with them for different skills development initiatives. And lastly, at the top, obviously, our large companies and our small SMMEs, we do partner with them. Colleagues, I am going to be maybe in the next minutes also to have a focus in terms of the areas of the SMMEs, because these are the important areas that we as South Africa, if we want to respond positively into our economy, we really need to support the SMMEs. But I will give you more insights maybe in respect of those ones. And in terms of beneficiaries and SITA pledge, we as a there's a question, program director. I can take questions as we go along, if you allow me.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry if I appear that I'm putting pressure on you. We are just about to leave as Buffalo City College. Our shuttle is here. We have to leave because our flight is at 1, so we're gonna go. So I wanted us to ask this question before we go, because after I get the answer, I will have to quickly sneak out. The question that I have regards the strategic partnership with FoodBev. What I want to check is, can we run this process parallelly? The one of submitting our discretionary grant application together with the application or request for partnership with FoodBev, because I fear the situation that we apply for discretionary grant and then we still do want to form partnership with FoodBev, but then maybe we're not allowed to do that after we have submitted the application grant, or we were supposed to run these processes together. So that's what I want to check, because we are going to apply. In fact, we have started the process of filling the form and all that for the grant application. But then now when you talk of strategic partnership, I thought I might as well check that if you can run those processes in a parallel way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it also pleases me that you come from the TVET college. Yes, the answer is yes. If you, for instance, now there are 2 windows that are opened, one for discretionary grants. So you can apply for a discretionary grant. It has got its own process. And remember, like I've indicated, the intentions in the discretionary grants are slightly different as opposed to those in the special projects. For instance, in the discretionary grants, we will be addressing the pivotal programs. So those that are credit bearing and leading to a qualification. But with the partnership, it can be other areas which might not always be credit bearing. It can be other areas that you want to cover on. Let's say, for instance, issues like maybe lecture capacity as an example. So, and for a reason, maybe to say there's a shortage in terms of them responding to our sector. Therefore, yes, you can do this parallel, and but their intentions are completely different. I hope I've answered you. Then, is there any question maybe that I can quickly cover, which is pending that cannot wait until I'm done? Not for now. Thank you. So, colleagues, beneficiaries, and what we pledge as a SETA. We know that as a country, we need to respond to the areas of vulnerable groups. In this case, where we refer to women, youth, and people with disabilities. And in the main, we do encourage that our the partnerships, that they should be focused in addressing the challenges in respect of skills development that are faced by women, the challenges that are faced or that will respond to youth, because that the majority of the youth in the country is neither in employment or education nor in training. So that becomes our focus, and we know that the youth is our future. If we get things wrong into our current youth, we don't invest into our youth, then our future is deemed to be doomed. Then the other part that we want to, we are focusing on, and we do encourage the entities to submit proposals on, is partnerships that seek to address people with disabilities. So those areas, I must say that when we look into a partnership, we are more biased into looking and saying that, is it addressing these areas? Because we've got targets as a SETA and as a country that we need to respond to in ensuring that we do respond to the vulnerable groups as I've indicated. But most importantly, even if we do want to respond to those colleagues, it will also not be an empty check wherein maybe you can just filter anything and everything. No, there are project objectives that we seek to achieve out of those. The objectives, if in you responding to these beneficiaries, is that it should lead to increased focus on the production of skills by opening opportunities for skills for the previously disadvantaged individuals. So that's one area in respect of the objectives which should be covered. Secondly, the project outcomes that should be covered is that it should increase in levels of investment within the previously disadvantaged individuals through community, individuals in the community through education and training. So those are the areas that we will be looking into. And lastly, unfortunately, I think those who are residing where we are now, they might not be covered by our partnerships. For instance, we also want to make sure that it should be implemented in the rural areas and township communities, because we've focused more in addressing those particular areas. So it's important that, so also on this one, you should be able to can have your own tick box. And you will see, colleagues, when you look into our current terms of reference, there is an area in terms of the evaluation criteria. So you can start seeing here whether your proposal is on the right track. So measure yourself so that you, by the time you make a submission to us, you have already created the checklist for yourself, which the checklist in itself is what I'm presenting today. Right, ideal partnership model and some key area focus. Firstly, colleagues, this is just but a way of re-emphasizing that your concept, your idea, it should be very clear. So you need to have a thorough, defined concept. And in this case, very easy. What will be a clear concept or idea? One of the things is to say, is that idea responding to the food bev sector? Or is that idea responding to any of the national priorities in respect of, with reference to the Food Bev Sector Skills Plan, with reference to the Food Bev Strategic Plan? So that concept, that idea must be very clear in terms of what is it that you want to address. So the next part is with regard to the planning part of it. So in your once you have given us your clear your idea, we need to see that the idea is good, but you've got a clear plan in terms of how you are going to execute that idea. That should also come up very clear, because a clear concept, a clear idea does not always result into positive outcomes that we intend to achieve. Therefore, it is important that you need to have a clear plan that will be convincing to myself, to the CEO, to the board, and everyone to say, okay, no, this is a good idea, but this idea will not fall down the cracks before it gets implemented or before the project is finalized. So it must be very clear, because remember here as a CETA, we are also using the stakeholders levies, but therefore we need to make sure that the planning is clear. And also in terms of the resources, we as a CETA will always make sure that as we support you, that we put in place the necessary resources. But even yourself, yes, you have got a good concept, you've got a good plan, but do you have the resources? Because one individual can make a good concept and make a good plan, but do you have the resources for you to implement this strategic partnership? It's very important. It must be clearly outlined, of course. Then the other part is communication and engagement, in terms of how are we going to flexibly be in a position to engage so that we make sure that the intended outcomes are achieved. And finally, how are you going to monitor? Because even and this model, it's applicable to us as FoodBev CETA and to you as an entity who want to partner with us. The monitor and evaluate to say, how are you going to make sure that you've got a good concept, a good planning, a good resource, but you also need to say, now those resources, you might have them, but if there is no proper monitoring in place, then the project might not be successful. We would like to see that, yes, there will be an ongoing monitoring and evaluation as and when the project is implemented. So these are the areas, colleagues, which are really important. I just want to touch on, it's not on my slide, on some of the areas for this current, because now we need to talk more about current. For the current terms of reference, which are out in terms of the partnerships. For instance, one of the areas, like the CEO has indicated, colleagues, is we want to address the challenge of artisan development through the centers of specializations. And unfortunately, my colleague from Buffalo City and other colleges, please, this one it's more earmarked to the centers of specializations, which are the TVET colleges. And there are designated identified trades, 13 identified trades, which are to be implemented through the centers of specialization. So one of the things, if your project or your current respond to our current terms of reference, it must address those ones, because this is one of the projects which is directly handled by the Deputy Minister, and we as a CETA are expected to respond to it, because as a country we need by 2030 to have a target of the number of artisans that we will be preparing each and every year, which is 30,000, and at this stage we are not nearer to achieving that target, so it still remains a priority. Then the other area which is important that should be addressed by the current terms of reference is the response to the small business development. And in this case, there is quite a number of areas which should be addressed by this particular project. But most importantly, we do not just want to train them, but they should be ready to continue with their small business. Hence, the element of incubation, it becomes very critical when we talk about this project of capacitating small business development, whether it's areas related to say new venture creation, or the areas related to marketing their businesses using the digital technologies. So those areas are important. And we are also looking into areas of transformation incentives. In this case, I've indicated those beneficiaries very critical. If you have got a dedicated idea seeking to respond to people with disabilities, then this current window which is opened, it seeks to address those areas. And lastly, we talk of the international exposure, wherein we are saying the graduates, we know that we've got quite a number of graduates in a country who are not employed currently. So we want to give them an international experience. So look into the current terms of reference because it also seeks to respond to that part. I just wanted maybe to also give you, in respect of the current terms of reference, which is out in terms of what are the areas that should be looked into. And I'm almost at the end now. The success, we have had different partnerships which has yielded positive results, which were implemented in the previous financial year. For instance, we've got a partnership with Asima Women NPC, wherein its intention was to develop the skills of rural and township youth and women who are focusing in agro-processing business and other small businesses within the sector. So in this one, why are we saying we have had some good results? Their program was saying we respond to new venture creation as a learnership. But the difference is that it was not just taking them, the unemployed, just training them, but they ended up with their registered businesses. And there are some successes in terms of incubation, wherein now when we were in KZN, we even managed to visit those, wherein now those individuals who were trained through the program, now they've got their own business, and we have seen some success in those ones. So these are typical programs we would like to see, wherein you do not, your focus should not be only until when the project is finalized, but post the implementation of the project, we would like to work with you to see those results, to say, was it a proper investment in that regard? And we've got currently another initiative, and Lisandra did indicate yesterday that for some of the entities, although the project is coming to an end in March, where University of Johannesburg is taking through the SMEs through the digital skills knowledge for them to write the SMEs. It can be for them in terms of, number one, in respect of this specific one, the intention was to say, get a number of SMEs, but because this is a university and they even specialize with research programs, let them firstly identify to say, what are the key issues, what are the challenges which are faced by our SMEs? So then, having done that, now that they know, they've taken stock of the challenges, then they take it a step further in terms of coming up with the solutions, in terms of capacitating them, for instance, in terms of how best can they market their business. So this project, I think at this stage, as in last week when I checked, they've already trained about 130 or so. They are training the last batch now because they were to train 400 by March 2022. So also this one, we've also seen some of the returns, because part of the things identified was to say that they will have to develop an app that will be able to assist these entities for them to do easy marketing for their businesses and any other things and any other areas which were identified at gap closure, to say maybe they need to cover those through an app that needs to be developed. And these are the contacts of the team that deals with the strategic projects within the food bev SETA, and headed by myself as a senior manager. There's my contacts, and there's contacts for the two managers and in the department. So when you've got a problem, you can refer to them. And I will be opening for the questions in that regard. But most importantly, colleagues, I hope as I was taking you through this presentation, you formulate your checklist which you will be responding to when you prepare the proposal where you intend to partner with Food Bev SETA. And Like the CEO has indicated, it's a partner. In a partnership, you will not just be saying, I want, I want, I want. The big thing will also be to say, what are you bringing? It's very important. That component of what are you bringing? I know, don't even think of it in the context of money. It can be money, but sometimes there will be something specific that you are bringing. Remember, in the DG, we just give and then they implement. But here, we partner. We give and then you also provide something in return. Thanks, colleagues. Questions? I'll assist me with the questions. Yes, I see one hand for now. There's a hand here. Who's got a mic? No, they would like to be covered on our. Yeah, we want that you be covered on our social media platforms. And any other, even those who are joining us virtually, so that we can be audible.
Okay, thank you, Mugidi. I've just got two questions. I wasn't here yesterday, but what I picked up today is that the one question is relating to the first thing.
For the interest of those who are at home, your name and surname.
I'm Gerald Griffiths. I'm a training provider. So the one thing is that what I want to know, you touch on it. There is this problem that stakeholders also had and providers have in terms of the allocation of learners with the 2021 and 2022. Now, several letters goes out to say that this is the amount of learners, and then there came up letters that say, sorry, we apologize, that is a fault. Now, some stakeholders, let me put it this way, some stakeholders already recruited on the amount that was sent out, as this is your amount of learners, and even communicated with some of your team. And I know when grants, the DGs are set out, it's set out, and that is the amount that is been sent out. But now, that is one of your holdups within the department. That is why some of the stakeholders don't sign those contracts, for one, is because the numbers on the contracts doesn't correspond on the numbers of the letters that were sent out. The other thing that is on your first thing that worries why people don't send in that contracts, because I know of a few. The other thing that I want to touch on, it's now coming back to what you just explained. I just want to check here on my notes. You said you're gonna talk a lot about the SMMEs. You touch on it. Now, with these projects, you correctly said that you guys give it mostly to the professionals, but most of the professionals came then back to providers to ask them to help them. Now, those providers are SMMEs and medium who must help them in terms of getting internships for my learners. No, you will be surprised. And now, looking at that in terms of artisans, coming back to artisans, I know you coming from that background too, because you were at Mersita. And now, we all know that coming back to the rural areas, that is where the problem lies. And we look at unemployment. Unemployment is under the youth is 70%, if not 75% now. We're sitting with that in terms of the rural areas. Now, for one, if you are unemployed and your colleges is in Cape Town and you in the Western Cape, on the West Coast, You know, you already don't have money, but to get to the college or the university, tough luck, you won't get there. So there must be, in terms of your special projects, you know, the outline is great. In terms of the artisans, I'm talking about that now, is how can private providers help you to get those people to a college or, you know, or a varsity? How can a private provider help you? Did you look at that in that essence as to how can a SMME help to get those learners to there in terms of a project? You know, it's also that outcome will be there. Taking them to Cape Town, make sure they're there, make sure that they go through all, you know, all those things. Take them to a college, the outcomes is there, and make sure that all the documentation and everything goes through to food bev. And I think then, in terms of artisans, that also will help you reach your targets. Because some of the colleges, I can just take and give you an example. The college, Friedenberg College, can take only so much learners, you know, and say for instance 20, but there's 100. Now 70, 80 is at home because they don't have transport money to come to Cape Town where the other colleges are. Which means you're going to give those colleges the project and they're going to just look what is in Cape Town. The people on the West Coast, for instance, are lost. They once again, nowhere. There was something else, but let me rather stop there.
Thanks, Mr. Griffiths. That was great. The first part, whilst the new hands will be raised so that we can take further questions. The first part, it talks about numbers of the contract not tally with what was allocated, if I get it correct. And I would say, because where I'm standing now, I'm not aware, but it's something that I would, maybe it's more specific, and I would love that if was that communicated to back to Food Bev, but it's something that if somebody has had that specific, I think it's one example. There can be more of areas that hinders our contracts not to come back, but that is but one example which I would like to get the details and so that we can take it from there. It's more specific, of course. But once more, I'm saying if there's someone with a similar challenge, inclusive of those who are joining online or for this capacity session, please, that's it's something that we would like to attend as in yesterday. Then the other part, I think you have narrated it with quite some inputs into what you think should happen and so forth. But the specific one, I think it relates and it responds to the issue of us dealing with the centers of specialization, in particular the artisans in that respect. And to sum up what you were saying, the key issue there is if you want to respond to the rural areas, the problem maybe for them, it becomes a transport in respect of them going to the TVET colleges at the, let's say in towns or so. If, for instance, that particular trade is offered in town, whatever. So having said that, hence we call this one is just that it does not come through just a normal DG. Remember, in a normal DG, that problem will not cater for it. We'll just say, yes, DG, we issue 206,000 and that's it, as an example. But depending on how that challenge is put, the narrative of that challenge is put in as part of your proposal. Those are some of the things, obviously. When you say, okay, Western Cape, I'm not sure of the areas in Western Cape. It has got these areas and that areas, but area A, B, and C, it has got a challenge of, let's say, crime and this and that, but we would like to support the artisans there as a focus area, but they've got this challenge to transport them, whatever. So if it's part of the, then we can go over and above the normal funding model, which was presented yesterday, but I think you know it through your experience. It can go outside the normal. Remember, there will be a management fee, but if that management fee is not enough, that's where maybe your top up, it can be discussed, but it will not be a blanket check, because you would have made your homework and say the transport maybe in respect of area A to area Z, it costs so much, whatever, and we would like to take so many apprentices, then that will be covered, because I'm talking here about a special project. So anything it's unique in itself. Other questions?
Good morning, sir. My name is Rian Hoffman. I'm from Northern Tiwit College. I think for the Tiwit it's quite a privilege today to be in attendance regarding the partnership discussions. So my question relates to discretionary grants. And I know it's not about that, but I don't know whether the opportunity will be again be afforded to present the question. So in 2020, 2021, Northern Tiwit College was awarded a funding letter, and of which we really, was very ecstatic to receive the award as such. So when we engaged the content of the funding letter pertaining to the project management fee of 7.5% encapsulated in your grants policy, we've dealt with Mr. Big Fish at the time, and subsequent, to that, we had to walk away from the opportunity. So I want to understand, your grants policy says that 7.5% can be considered favorably for project management fee, and how come that was not, honored as such? And I think maybe going forward, because in terms of, for a college, it's quite important to sort of unlock that 7.5% for various reasons, because, for example, operational costs has to be incurred, and yeah. So I want to maybe just have a better understanding as to why FoodBev does not or has not entertained the request in terms of the project management fee of 7.5% relevant to your grants policy. Thank you.
Thanks. I think my answer that unless maybe I might be missing something in terms of our policy. In terms of the discretionary grants, there is no 7.5. That 7.5 management fee, it's not covered in terms of discretionary grant. So unless maybe you might have seen it in the portion that talks to special projects or strategic projects. Unless I miss it, CEO, that's how I know it. I don't know if there's a 7.5 covered. And if your DG was talking about 7.5, I'm not sure where it might be coming from, but definitely not from our policy. Okay, the CEO wants to add something? If it's something, is there something that I'm missing maybe? But definitely not for the DGs at the 7.5. CEO, stand up.
Yeah, I was. Morning again. Oh, by the way, I'm on camera. Apologies, I just can't do this. I can't not face the person I'm talking to. So, cameraman, find a way. So, the 7.5% is, like he says, it's specifically, we package for projects that are special or partnership implementations. But 7.5 is also allocated to FoodBev SETA because we also implement discretionary grants. So in the policy, we do highlight what the 7.5 pays for within our administration in terms of us implementing discretionary grants. But when you apply as a stakeholder and employer, and a college, it's a collaborative effort. So we don't pay you 7.5. However, we pay grants that are allocated to you because you also contribute one way or the other in terms of administration. So that's how we look at it, because that 7.5 that you're reading about in the policy is specifically for us to be able to implement these grants as Food Bev SETA. But when we're dealing with specific projects that are not necessarily implemented through DGs, then we allocate 7.5% because we understand that it might not be necessarily employers or colleges that we're dealing with. It might be special projects where you're capacitating our very poor of the poorest communities. So we allocate that funding. But that comes from the retained funds. So from those retained funds, we put aside 7.5%, but the discretionary grants is allocated for us to implement from an administration point of view. I hope that's clear.
Thank you.
There's another question.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you. Greet you all. My name is Zandile Kumalo from the TVETs. I'm also interested to know, you spoke about the centers of specialization, and to my understanding, please do correct me, that it was a pilot project. When is it going to roll out? And secondly, coming to the lecturer capacitating, just clarify it for me. Is it, I don't know how to put it, should it be done by each college or it could be done central? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me quickly start with your latter question, where you talk about the capacity building of the college lecturers. In terms of the National Skills Development Plan, one of the objectives for us is the capacitation of the TVET sector, and then as SETAs, then we tend for it to be easily managed. It's not centralized because now each and every SETA will have to respond in terms of what is it that they've done in respect of the capacity building of the TVET college lecturers. Is one area that we are expected to respond to. And then when coming to the centers of special, yes, this is a project that came back during quite a number of years. But for it to make it more focused and to see more results, remember, if you, like it was put to say, SETAs must respond to this and provide capacity to the centers of specialization wherein artisans will be produced. Now, hence, as a SETA now, we make it more dedicated. Like I've said, that as by 2030, we are not nearer to ensuring that we will be able to produce the number of artisans, which is 30,000 per annum, which are earmarked. Now, as a SETA, we are saying that we want to produce even more. So not only, remember, in as much as they might be covered through your normal discretionary grant, but we put in more emphasis and want to achieve that target of the rollout for centers of specialization as a special project, because it is a national priority. Hence, it becomes something that we, over and above what we might be doing in the normal DG, we focus on it through the special project. Any questions? Thanks, Western Cape. Baie dankie Kaapstad. Ek geniet dat daar was yeah, now I'm getting stuck. Now, actually, I wanted to use a very high-leveled Afrikaans, but though It wasn't easy. Okay, thanks for the questions and thanks for the engagement. And please, once more, and you know what, at least I can see who was not here yesterday, just through the engagement. I won't see who else, because some of the questions were already covered, or the things were covered yesterday. But thanks, it was good. And then on that note, I'm going to allow the program director to give a direction in terms of the way forward. Thank you.
I must be very honest. We prayed very hard and fasted very hard when we were coming to Cape Town, to the Western Cape. And the person we're fasting for, he showed up today. We're not going to mention names. You know, the guilty are always afraid. We're fasting that we have answers. But we're very happy to see you. We really, really appreciate that you're always on our invites. Without wasting too much time, and if you really would like to engage more with SNAIM Giti, please do so, because partnerships we're finding are becoming a beautiful model for us, where we're able to extract really great projects and really great thinking. And I think maybe going back and summarizing what he said, he spoke to conceptualizations, or rather conceptualization of ideas. We don't know where a great idea will come from, as long as it's sustainable and it contributes to the economy of to the economy of South Africa, and it benefits the people that it's intended to benefiting. It's something that's worth looking at. So we do encourage you to please go back, think very hard about what is it that you think can be done more for us to accelerate, progression in communities that need to. Let's just now also welcome Mr. Llewellyn van Zyl. He's going to be speaking about quality assurance. Sorry, he's manager for quality assurance. He's going to be speaking about accreditations and moderations. An interesting conversation that I encourage you to stick around for. Thank you.
Good morning, Cape Town, Kaapstad, Slaapstad. The N2 is, I don't know how you guys survive that highway. I don't know. It's the only one going to the airport, right? The N2. You can't take back roads or anything. Yo, I don't know. Eh? Okay, thank you, everybody. After that very serious presentation from Mr. Mgidi, I thought I'll start off with a little bit of humor this morning. I don't know if you guys have heard the one about the lawyers and the engineers. I'm sure some of you might have heard it. So there are 3 lawyers and 3 engineers. They're standing on the train platform and they're about to go to a conference. And the 3 lawyers buy 3 train tickets. And the 3 engineers buy 1 train ticket. And the lawyers laugh at the engineers and say, how are you going to ride this train with 1 train ticket? And the engineers say, don't worry, you'll see. So they get on the train, and the engineers quickly run and go and hide in the bathroom, and the 3 lawyers are sitting in their seats, and the conductor comes along, and the conductor takes the 3 lawyers' tickets, and they knock on the conductor knocks on the door of the bathroom, and the door opens a little bit, and the ticket comes out, and the ticket goes, and the conductor walks. So the lawyers think, wow, this is brilliant, we must do this on the way back. So on the way back, the 3 lawyers buy 1 ticket and the 3 engineers don't buy any tickets. And the lawyers laugh at the engineers and say, how the hell are you going to ride the train with no tickets? And the engineers say, don't worry, you'll see. So they get on the train and the 3 lawyers run into the bathroom and the 3 engineers run into the bathroom next door. And as the lawyers close the bathroom door, one of the engineers goes out and knocks on the door of the engineers. So sometimes it's better to be an engineer than a lawyer. Okay, guys, so starting off today, we're going to be talking about the following topics. Wow, my eyes are bad. So the accreditation process. Do we maybe have a laptop I can put up here? I cannot see that screen. It's just blurry. My eyes are very bad. My glasses are in my car and my car's in Joburg. little bit higher. Okay. I can't see, it's just a blur to me. Oh, can I use the button? All right, sorry about that, guys. But what I'm going to be presenting today, thank you, is obviously the accreditation for primary providers or any new training providers that would like to become accredited, the extension of scope process, the learning program approval, that's pretty much the extension of scope, the external moderation and obviously the process and timeframes around that, and then the QCTO related challenges and effects. No, I still can't see. My eyes are very bad. Okay.
Slides.
Ah, perfect.
So how
That's
do you
better.
want that to be controlled then?
I'll just use this button here.
But then they're not seeing that there's someone
Okay.
from here.
All right.
So
Now I'll just move it along here.
criteria now.
Two.
This is
There
where
we
you
go.
are.
Perfect. Okay, so continuing with the criteria for accreditation, I just want to quickly see a show of hands in the audience. Who is looking to become an accredited provider with FoodBev CETA that's not already accredited? Okay, great, guys, because I'm going to be here after the roadshow for some time. So you guys are welcome to come and sit with me and discuss this in more detail if you want, okay? So what I'm going to be doing now is basically giving you guys just a quick high-level process of the accreditation with FoodBev CETA. So in order to become accredited, you need to be a CIPC a juristic person established in terms of the South African laws. That means that you need to have a CIPC registration document, your SARS compliance or tax clearance, your director's ID copy that is certified, your BE certificate or exemption letter, learning program, and ETD QMS. So ETD is your education, training and development, and your QMS is your quality management system. Your ETD practitioners, which is your facilitators, assessors, and internal moderators. Your training venue or a third-party venue MOU is also accepted. So use the mouse here. Next one. Okay. So in terms of the flow, your top left square there would be the accreditation guidelines. That's where you should start. For the new providers in the building today, I do have that with me, so I can send that through to you. I've got this whole presentation. It's all linked to hyperlinks, okay? So as you click on the hyperlinks, you'll get these documents going forward. So when I share this with you, you just click on those links, you'll see they're underlined, and you'll be able to read those documents in full. The second process would be, now we can stay on that hopscotch over there. Then your top right will be your application to the QCTO. It's basically called a letter of intent. That hyperlink will take you to their website with their letter of intent that you would complete. It's just a one-pager. You complete that and you send it to that email address there, accreditation@qcto.co.za. Then bottom left, the QCTO will respond to give you permission to apply for accreditation with the FoodBev CETA. Then you must include in your application the top middle, which is your assessor and moderator registration documents to be submitted with the accreditation application process. And I've got the link there, ASMOD, for the assessor registration documents. Then the submission evidence must be submitted to accreditation queries at foodbev.co.za. But please use this as a CC, the accreditation. Use it as a CC and send it to bigfishm@foodbev.co.za, and you can also CC me in on that as well. But I'll give you all the context at the end of the presentation. Yeah. Okay, so step one, you get your QCTO response letter. you complete your signed application form. There is the hyperlink for the application form. You submit your CIPC registration documents, your tax clearance, your director's ID, your BE certificate or exemption letter, your learning program, so that would be your learner, assessor, assessment facilitator guide and alignment matrix, and your ETD QMS. I have included an example of the alignment matrix in the slide as well. Your ETD practitioners, your facilitators, assessors and internal moderators, your training venue, like earlier stated, we will accept third-party venue MOUs. Your learning material, we do have some generic learning material available. It was developed quite a long time ago, so please make sure your internal moderator looks at that material and signs it off after you've reviewed it. You cannot submit it as is. It's just not updated enough to be submitted as is, but we do have some learning material available, and I've also included it as a hyperlink in this presentation. Then step 2, you complete the application form, you complete your assessor and moderator registration forms, you complete your QMS. I have got a link on what should be in your QMS, which is all your policies and procedures related to you as a provider and your implementation of the program. Your delivery matrix, I have an example of that too. Learning and assessment material. So we've changed it up slightly for skills programs. You need to submit a minimum of 3 unit standards if your skills program is more than 3 unit standards. Then for a full qualification, your sample of learning material will be 3 unit standards, 1 core, 1 fundamental, and 1 elective. Is this microphone running away from me? Microphone is moving here, but it's fine. You can still hear me, right? Okay, good. All right, so step 3. This is basically the evaluation process that happens. So we will evaluate the submitted evidence. It takes place at a desktop level. The feedback will then be provided to the applicant. Any outstanding information, if required, will be communicated. The application the applicant is then informed to apply for induction moderation or an accreditation site visit. The induction moderation link over there will be the application form that you would need to complete. I think it's on page 3 of the toolkit, and then you would submit that to Lani M at FoodBev for the appointment of that moderator. So that moderator will then come and have a look to make sure that all your learning and assessment material has been developed and it's aligned to all the outcomes. They will also check your policies and procedures to make sure that they are, all the NQF principles. And then you would get a report you would need to sign. The internal moderator would need to sign that report from the external moderator. And then going forward, you would then be able to actually implement the program. So induction moderation takes place. It's a developmental approach. The induction moderation report is received and evaluated. The accreditation letter for a skills program should be then provided to you within 5 working days. If it's for a learnership, the recommendation to the QCTO for the full qualification will be submitted within 5 working days. If there's a compliance plan required, we will let you know. So if the moderator has found evidence or gaps in your process, that will be highlighted in the report. We will then assist you with a compliance plan so that you can meet the requirements and close those gaps, and then reapply for induction just to make sure everything is sorted out for you. Then the extension of scope, or LPA, that is for training providers that already have accreditation and would like to extend their scope to FoodBev CETA, or if you have accreditation with another CETA and would like to extend your scope to FoodBev CETA, or if you are already accredited with FoodBev CETA and would like to extend your scope to another program within FoodBev CETA. So in terms of that process, it's a little bit simpler because you already have accreditation. So you would just complete the accreditation application form. For a provider that's with another CETA, you would submit your primary CETA accreditation letter, the extension of scope letter from the primary CETA. All CETAs know what an extension of scope letter is, so you just ask them for that and they'll send it to you. Then the alignment matrix, I've got the sample there for you. Then your 3 unit standards that's got to do with your learning material, and then your assessor and moderator registration documents. Okay, then external moderation. But before I go on to external moderation, do we have any general questions around accreditation or extension of scope? Marius, yes.
Hi, good morning, audience. Marius Jonas from Competence Performance Consulting. Llewellyn, can you go back to that hopscotch of yours, please? That slide. Yeah, the hopscotch.
Okay, there we go.
That one. Yeah. The QCTO response. How long does that take? Or should it take?
Okay, so we found it's not just a food bev issue. It seems to be CETA-wide. And the quickest I've seen is probably about 2 weeks on a request. And the longest I've seen, I'm still waiting.
Yeah.
So it's currently their turnaround time for that response letter is sort of up in the air. I can't tell you it's going to be 2 weeks or a month. I don't know.
So what do we do if we do not get response from the QCTO? Because then effectively the process is halted.
Not necessarily. What we do at Food Bev is we carry on processing. So we process in the background with your application that you've submitted, and then we carry on with our own process because we don't know what the turnaround is going to be from the QCTO. And then when that letter comes in, we just then add it to your application.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, qualifications gets approved by the QCTO and skills programs by the CETA.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
So you saying the CETA will uphold and honor the qualifications irrespective of the fact that the QCTO did not approve it as yet?
So what we do is we send on your behalf, we send a letter of recommendation for accreditation to the QCTO. And then what we'll do is we'll CC the training provider in on that communication so that you can see your process has been approved by us and we're now recommending it for accreditation. But in terms of putting your accreditation number on the system, that number is then given to us by the QCTO for the quals. So everything is done on our system, but we can't close it until we get that letter from the QCTO.
Yeah. And in the meantime, as you say, if you don't get the stuff from the QCTO, we wait.
Yeah, so what we're currently doing is on a monthly basis, we follow up on all the recommendations made to the QCTO to get feedback on the approval letters. And so far, they seem to be responding to that. But if we don't follow up, it's just quiet. Yeah.
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 So you're saying that the Food Bev CETA is actually following up,
yes,
and we should then leave it in your hands?
Yeah, leave it in our hands. We do follow up every month on all submitted recommendations, and then 9 times out of 10 we get a response from that. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Llewellyn.
Welcome. Any other questions around accreditation? We good? Or are we going to chat after? Okay. No problem. All right, moving on to external moderation. Yeah, next slide. This one, yes. Okay. So what is external moderation? It's the process conducted to determine if assessments and internal moderations at the provider level were facilitated in a valid, ethical, accurate, transparent, fair, reliable, credible, systematic, authentic, and practical way. This is achieved through site visits at the training provider site. Virtually, we can conduct this virtually or physically. Then the site visits are conducted by external moderators contracted by the Food Bev CETA. Next slide. Okay. The types of external moderation that we have is the induction moderation linked to the accreditation process. Then we have induction moderation for the preparedness to deliver a learning program. We have interval moderation, which is valid for full qualifications. That is done at a 50% credit completion to check adherence to your implementation plan, your implementation schedule, your assessment processes and principles, and internal moderation principles and processes. And then we do exit moderation, which is conducted at 100% credit completions, and this is also linked to your certification decisions or the closing off of your programs. So the Food Bev CETA does generally 3 moderations, one at the beginning, one in the middle to make sure you're still on track, and then one at the end for the closing and certification process. So in terms of the process in external moderation, you would send so an appointment. So you would first submit your application. So there are 3 applications: your induction, your interval, or your exit. I think it's on page 3 of each toolkit. You can use those toolkits to prepare yourself for the external moderation. Once we receive your application, we will do an appointment of the moderator. The external moderation is then conducted. The report is issued. The provider will then attend to any non-compliances where necessary. And then in regards to exit moderation, there will be the closeout or certification of your learners. Okay, with regards to the QCTO accreditation process, the accreditation process for the QCTO qualifications are handled directly by the QCTO. So accreditation of new qualifications will be conducted by the QCTO solely. To obtain the information on the process and requirements, please contact the QCTO directly. And what we've done is we've included the link there for you on the application document that you would need to complete to get accreditation for any of the new QCTO qualifications. So far, we've got one provider that is trying desperately to be accredited with the QCTO. They started a couple years ago with the application. The QCTO are still sort of finding their feet in that process. So as soon as we learn more from that provider, we will let you know. But currently that process is still sort of in flux in terms of for the new qualifications. And it's also a CETA-wide issue at the moment. So in terms of the QCTO-related changes, so in the QCTO model, their role is going to be the accreditation of SDPs, or what they call skills development providers. They are also going to be responsible for the approval of the ISA, which is your external integrated summative assessment. They will also be responsible for the moderation of the ISA and the certification of learners. The Food Bev CETA's role on the other side will be the accreditation of assessment centers, the development of the ISA for approval by the QCTO, the administration and management of the ISA, and the actual coordination of the entire assessment process. So that'll be the Food Bev CETA's role going forward from 2023-2024. Currently, some of the challenges that we experience in the QA department, so the internal QA moderation outcomes not being upheld. Like I said, some providers apply for induction moderation when they're not completely ready, and we find that those gaps are quite huge when we get the reports back from the moderators. So my appeal is that when you apply for induction, use the toolkit to prepare yourself for induction and make sure that all your gaps are closed. So when the moderator gets there, if there's anything they can assist you with, they can assist you with. But if there's nothing there, then they can't help you with anything. If you don't have the documents available, they can't really assist you in terms of closing gaps. The learning material that doesn't cover all the assessment criteria, outcomes in the unit standards. We find that some of the material being presented during induction moderation is not up to standard. So please make sure your material is reviewed and signed off by your internal moderator so that it's ready for external moderation. Incomplete accreditation applications, documents missing in your application. This presentation I'm going to make available to everyone. So in here, if you follow this presentation and the steps and the guidelines, all your documents should be in place when you submit for your accreditation application. Postponement of induction moderation, you apply for induction and then you keep postponing. That creates frustration on the appointed moderator side, and it also creates frustration in our turnaround times in terms of appointing and getting the reports back. So please make sure you're ready for induction when you apply for induction. The new occupational qualifications have less applications. Like I said, for the new qualifications registered with the QCTO, we have 12 that are registered with the QCTO, sorry, 11 that's registered currently with the QCTO. So far, we've only got one SDP that's attempted the accreditation process. What I'm asking for is that we all try and get accreditation for the new qualifications, just so that we can put some added pressure on the QCTO to sort out their house and assist us with the accreditation against the new programs. So if there's a low demand, there seems to be less movement from the QCTO, but if there's a high demand, we might get some more traction there. Then an increase in online capacity. So the mitigation that we are doing against our challenges is an increased online capacitation of all stakeholders. So we are doing a lot more online or virtual capacitation of stakeholders throughout the year. We just find that it's just a quick way of touching base with everybody and giving them updates and getting recommendations from the sector. And also we have committed and are busy developing all the learning and assessment material for the new qualifications. So when you apply for your accreditation, you will have the learning and assessment material available to you for all of the new qualifications. Currently, we've completed all the knowledge modules for all 11 qualifications that are registered with the QCTO. We are still busy with the practical and workplace components, but it is moving along quite quickly. Then just the final slide before, just our contacts. So my senior manager is Mr. Ntokozo Lewandle. His direct extension is 7311, and his email address is ntokozoL@foodbev.co.za. Then it's myself, my extension is 7323, and it's llewellynv@foodbev.co.za. Big Fish will be assisting you with your accreditation applications. His extension is 7341, bigfishm@foodbev.co.za. And then Tulani Makatini will be assisting with your moderation requests, and that is 7371, and tulani.m@foodbev.co.za. And then two other things I just want to touch on before I hand over for questions. The one is the TVET lecturer capacitation project that the QA department is running. Next year's target, we have six TVET colleges that we can assist. So if you are interested, please send me an email as a TVET college that you want to participate in the TVET lecturer capacitation project, and I'll get in contact with you. The same with the companies. If the companies want to get involved, please let me know, send me a mail, and then we'll connect you with a TVET in your geographical area so that we can assist with capacitating those lecturers. And then just something I wanted to touch on in terms of the fishing industry in Cape Town. We recently found out that the SAMHSA and TITA qualifications that have expired and the ones at the QCTO that are not yet registered is a big challenge for you guys. So in terms of what we will do at FoodBev CETA, we are in talks with TITA at the moment to try and assist to get those qualifications registered for the fishing industry in terms of your regulations. So it's not just a FoodBev problem that the qualifications are taking long to get registered by the QCTO. It seems that TITA also submitted about 5 years ago to have their qualifications registered. But we have committed to work with TITA and see if we can get those qualifications pushed through a little bit quicker in terms of the regulations for the fishing industry. When we get feedback on that, we have meetings with TITA quite often. When we have more information on that, we'll let the fishing industry know about that. And then in terms of my presentation, that is that. Can I open the floor for any questions? One question over here. Only one. Was I that clear? Okay. I thought I wasn't that clear. Okay.
Okay. On. Oh, hello. Okay. So just it's probably a question for Sanaye than you, Louis. I just wanted to find out. So when you touched on the accreditation and the fact that at the QCTO they take long to get back to providers and all of that, I just wanted to find out now that we need to submit the DG applications, will Food Bev CETA accept the whatever letter that you provide with the learners in terms of recommendation for the accreditation? Will you guys accept that as an application, even though QCTO has not yet gotten back to the provider and upholding the accreditation? How will you guys handle that?
Okay, so in terms of the letter of intent or the approval letter coming back from the QCTO, that is not going to be required for your DG. What is going to be important for your DG application is your proof of accreditation. So what you receive back from the QCTO saying Company A is now accredited for this program. What we'll need to chat to Sanaye about is, will they accept the recommendation we send as a department to the QCTO, because we don't know what their turnaround time is like. So we'll discuss that with Mr. Sanaye. If the skills planning department accepts the recommendation letter as a placeholder for the accreditation letter coming, then maybe that's something we can consider. What do you think, Mr. Sanaye?
Thanks. I think we all know some challenges that are being experienced with areas of accreditation through QCTO, maybe where they take a bit long normally. And now what is also critical for us is to make sure that we mitigate risk in as much as we can. So, for instance, not knowing when will, remember there can be two things. It's either you have applied, but if we agree to it, we are not guaranteed that in the first place that it will be upheld, it will be approved. Anything can happen in the process and it doesn't get approved, and we have signed a contract and now the learners cannot start their training, so which is more risky, of course. So what I'm trying to indicate is that considering that that part is outside our control, whether it will be, the application will be approved or not, it's outside our control, it will definitely be difficult for us to approve the application based on a pending accreditation process. So it's unfortunate that, unfortunately, one cannot take that risk.
Okay, thank you. Another question, number 2. Gerald. I always get the most questions.
I don't know what you say, but mine, Mr. Van Zyl, is not much of a question. It's actually more of a compliment, so to speak, especially throughout this morning and also yesterday. I think I need to say it now because maybe after lunch, some of us will still be here, but some will be gone, to say the team now that we are currently having, including Forever You, are leading us to victory. Moreover, when we look at this setup now and the scenario now, because normally we'll have these beautiful virtual sessions or whatever, you know, that are face-to-face, but then when you go back to the office where we implement, it's just a total opposite of that. But now what you find here at this point in time is what is happening at your offices. We can say that because we were there yesterday, and we are still here today, and now we can draw the difference and we say, keep up the good job, keep on leading us to victory.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Gerald Griffiths has a question.
Llewellyn, yes, based on your last thing that you mentioned in terms of QCTO, in terms of the fishing sector, you know, this is not really a question. It's just that you guys mustn't forget to have talks with SAMHSA also, you know, because they are authority on their own as much as you link with TITA. Because TITA also need to go back to SAMHSA to make sure that those things get accredited for. That is the one thing, is just that I want to make that clear. The other thing is, the question is really in terms of the exams, QCTO exams, the exam story. Coming back to that. The one thing is that, listen, now, what I just want clarity in terms of that. Is the exams after the term, the exams, is it going to be drawn up by the CETA or QCTO? That is the one. And are you guys going to take into account that, for instance, let's take packaging. Packaging been done in various companies. No, I just generalize it here. So, is it also one that you now going to conceptualize the whole thing in terms of only this particular, or are you going to, like, for instance, the fishing or a packaging company outside of fishing, like the wine, is there two different exams going to be written or been drawn up, or only one because of the different sectors? So I just want clarity on that.
No problem.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, we've been thinking long and hard about this. In terms of the QCTO's approach at the moment, we find it very academic. They're looking at more of a matric exam model, where we would look at it as a manufacturing sector as a artisan NAM model in terms of your ISA process. So what the QCTO want is that the assessment center and the AQP, or the assessment quality partner, so in terms of what FoodBev will do is we will accredit the assessment center, which will be the workplace where the learners are doing their practical and workplace experience. We'll develop the external integrated summative assessment for that qualification. That will take place, the assessment will take place at that workplace. The administration and the management of that entire process will happen through the FoodBev CETA. So the submission of the exam papers will go through to the assessment center on the day of the assessment. What we are envisaging of doing is that instead of having a matric sort of examination process, we'll have a 2-day assessment process. The one day will be for your theoretical writing part, and the other day will be for the demonstration of your practical and workplace experience. And then those statement of results will be submitted to the QCTO for recommendation for certification. So that is the plan that we're busy toying with in terms of the assessment process. We cannot do it through an academic process, not in our sector. Our sector is 70% workplace experience. So that is the road we are going to take, and then the coordination of that entire process will be handled by the QA department. So we would have assessment dates at assessment centers predetermined through something called a quas addendum, and that quas addendum will then indicate for this company, these group of learners need to be in their final assessment on these dates. And then the training provider and the company work towards those dates. If there needs extensions, that'll happen if it's required, but the whole plan will be to have those ISA documents ready and the implementation ready for that final assessment. We'll all determine that as the program progresses. But yeah, we still need to do a lot of work around that. So when it comes time to implement, those assessment centres are going to be critical, obviously. But what we'll do is when we accredit the assessment centre, we'll also accredit the workplace at the same time for the theoretical, for all three components. So we need the providers to start applying for accreditation against these new programs so that we can put pressure on the QCTO to start accrediting those providers, which then allows us to go and accredit those assessment centres. Yeah, go ahead.
Is then, with the process, where does it leave the exit moderators?
Yeah, so the external... Yeah.
Because of the exams.
Yeah.
Are those results going straight to food bev?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
You're the custodians of that, the whole thing. So that is actually the last question.
Yeah, so what we're thinking of doing is during the invigilation process at the ISA, we will then include an external moderator there to review the entire process. So once the ISA is complete, we have the invigilators report, we have the exit report for those learners, and we obviously get back all the evidence required to prove competency. So we try and keep that process as close together as possible, so that when we do the submission to the QCTO, we're not waiting for another report or anything like that. So that's the idea, yeah. So there will be an additional moderation, because you'll have 3 moderations, one for your theoretical component, your practical, and then your workplace experience, and then your 4th one will be at the ISA. So there'll be 4 moderations. More questions? One at the back there. Does that cover everything, Gerald? Okay.
So basically on this, Llewellyn, we suppose there's going to be a session that leads us through the process, right?
Yeah.
That solely leads us to this whole process.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we still have our current qualifications available for enrollment until the end of March 2024, but we obviously want to start progressing into the new landscape as quickly as possible. But the current calls will still be available until the end of March 2024 for enrollment, and then completion up to 24, 5, 6, I think. Yeah, 2026. And then for the new providers, like I said, after all the presentations are done, I will still be around to answer any other questions around accreditation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. The time is exactly, 11 minutes past 12. Can I request that we come back at 12:30? At exactly 12:30, if you want to have quick conversations with Llewellyn, as we're getting another speaker that's going to be joining us online from Johannesburg. So 12:30. Thank you.
You hear me? Okay. All right. No, that's fine. Okay. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Oh no, yeah. Good afternoon, colleagues. 3 minutes to go for us to get back into the program of this afternoon. So 3 minutes, colleagues, to go. And to all of our stakeholders that are joining us online, we're going to be starting shortly. We're going to be joined by Mr. Mukuburi Bule, who is ready to be speaking to us. So colleagues that are still grabbing coffees and teas, 3 minutes to go. Can we ask you to start making your way back into the conference hall? Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're running 5 minutes late. We are getting back now into the program. What we're going to do is we're going to test the sound again just to check that Mr. Pule Mokhopudi or Mokhopudi Pule, Pule Mokhopudi, can you hear us all the way from Johannesburg? Mr. Pule, can I ask you to say hello to the guests in the room?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to the guests.
Okay, perfect. So the sound is working. That is Mr. Mokhopudi Pule. He's the Senior Manager for Finance at Foodbev CETA, and he's going to be speaking to, I need the presentation to be projected from here. Thank you. He's going to be speaking to the commitment register, retained funds, and grant recoveries. Remember the conversation about us clearing our commitments, over 100 million rands of them by the end of March. That's when our financial year ends. And you're part of the group that can help us move these funds, but obviously to worthwhile projects that we are trying to support and work with. So Mr. Pule, when you are ready, you can just let me know, then I can move to the next slide.
Okay. Thank you very much, Makateng. And good afternoon to our stakeholders sitting in the venue and those joining us virtually. As Makateng indicated, I will touch on mandatory grants. I will also speak to the commitment register, the retained funds, and the grant recoveries. You can move, Makateng. Maybe just to kickstart with mandatory grants. Next slide. Yes, stakeholders, I think I would not outline the process. I think Heidi Ngumbisa, Mr. Mgidi, and the CEO, I think they have actually emphasized the importance of submitting the WSPs. And I think one of the most important reason, is to actually assist us as the CETA, in identifying, the skills gap in our sector. So it is important that as you complete, you ensure that, you complete the WSP accurately and with the correct information. The other benefit is for you to participate with DGs. We just spoke now about the funding windows that we have open. If your WSP is approved, then you also are entitled to participate. We also, Nadem Gide also spoke about the strategic partnerships and special projects. Just by submitting this, you will then have an opportunity to also participate in that. The last one, I think it's all those that submit 20% of what you pay on a quarterly basis on the last day of the month, it gets paid back to the stakeholder. Next slide. Again, it is important, colleagues. I cannot overemphasize what the CEO said, insofar as the cash that we are sitting with in the bank. If I were to illustrate to you, we currently have about 965 million, and we get between 35 and 40 million rand a month. So if we're not gonna disburse anything by end of this month, believe you me, the Foodbev CETA would be sitting with over 1 billion rand in the bank account. And CEO did emphasize that we are not a banking institution. We want to disburse these funds, but you as stakeholders have to help us in disbursing these funds. I will illustrate, the amount of money that is owed to stakeholders, and this amount we are unable to disburse because stakeholders are not submitting grant claim forms. Stakeholders are not submitting completion when the learners have completed. So we still have funds, going back 4 years, where a learner was enrolled in the 18-19 financial year, and that learner has not completed. Next slide. Again, talking about the mandatory, this is just an illustration of insofar as the revenue for mandatory grant is concerned. You would see that in the 1920, we received 98 million for mandatory, but we only disbursed 78 million. 19 million was not claimed. So this is an 80% payout ratio. That percentage went down in the 2020-21 financial year. We are even forecasting for the 21-22 financial for this percentage to be even lesser than the previous financial year. And again, we are saying to stakeholders, for them to participate, they need to submit these claims. So now, coming to discretionary grants, and I think the processes have been outlined by Numisa and Heidi, and they did indicate that as far as we are concerned as the SETA, once you submit contracts, which the CEO this morning was requesting that if you can please urgently submit the contract for the 21-22 financial year, funding window, and submit the enrollment forms, because our target was to ensure that by end of this month, we have received all the contracts and we have received all the enrollment forms, so that early in March, we can start paying the first tranches. Just to illustrate, I did indicate last week we had not received as many contracts as we would have wished, but I can indicate today that in terms of funding for 21-22 financial year, we actually issued about 330 million. That was issued to as part of funding for this current financial year, and of that, we have received only 60 million worth of contracts, and this is just about 20% of what we need. So I am also pleading, just as the CEO pleaded with you, to please submit those contracts, submit those enrollment forms, so that we can register them, so that we can pay the first tranche before the end of the financial year. Remember, the other thing that we do, we get measured on our bank balances as well. The fact that our bank balance is sitting at this astronomical amount, it says that we're not disbursing. And again, it says something to our stakeholders that we are not training, we are not upskilling the sector as we are supposed to be doing it. So my plea today, again, as I indicated, is to please, if we can submit all those contracts, and not only those contracts, if you go to the 18-19 financial year, we have about 114 million that is still sitting there for learners that have not completed. So we have to pay those last tranches. If learners have completed, our request is that submit the grant claim form, submit all those proof of study, qualifications, whatever that we can submit, so that we can exit those learners in our system. So we still have this 114, and I can tell you now that by 31st of March, if this 114 is not claimed, we as the SETA will terminate all those learners. And the other thing that I need to request that I need to make, and I think Sam Gilisio will speak to it, is the issue of extensions. If you still have learners that are behind schedule in the 18-19 financial year, you need to approach the SETA and request the extension. But again, we also need to be fair. For a skills program that started in the 18-19 financial year, to be honest, I don't expect stakeholders, today to still be requesting that we extend the period of completing the program. Now, what I also need to highlight to you is that all these contracts that we are talking about, once we get all these contracts, we will then put them in what you call a commitment register. Because in the SETA's context, I just need to highlight this one, that commitment in the SETA's context, it means that the contractual obligation exists at the end of the financial year, and this will oblige us as the SETA to make a payment or payments in the ensuing year. You would remember as well that, as I indicated, that we still have for 18-19 financial year, we still have programs that have not been completed. But as I say, the contract will have the start and the end date. And most of these contracts for 18-19, the end date has passed. Some requested the extension. And I think the SETA's policy is that we can only extend for 1 year, after which we will then terminate. So there is about 414 million that would then have to be terminated. And this 114 million, remember that Mgidi spoke about the strategic partnerships. These are the funds that would then have to be diverted for all those special projects and strategic partnerships. You would realize that as a SETA, we are always reporting a surplus. we are not supposed to be reporting a surplus at all. When we budget, we don't budget for a surplus. In fact, when we allocate grants at the end of each financial year, we try and make sure that we allocate 10% more than what we can afford, because we are also providing for things like terminations, we're providing for things like cancellations. But even with that, the experience has always been that we are still unable to actually use up all the funding that we make available to stakeholders. So my request is that if you are awarded, if you have been given funding, please make sure that you use up all the funding. If you are awarded 100 learners, submit 100 enrollment forms. Make sure that the 100 starts, because we've had cases where some would then submit enrollment forms for 100 and only to find that only 50 will start the program. And in that case, because we would have paid the first tranche, what we also as the SETA would then do, we would then request that you pay back whatever that we have paid. And I don't think it's something that we want to do. All we want to do is to ensure that stakeholders do train and they claim their funds, and as they claim, then we are able to disburse all the funds that we need to talk to. Still on this illustration that I wanted to make on the slide that you are looking at now, you can see that for the 2019-20 financial year, we started opening balance in the commitment register was 595. And look at the terminations and adjustments. 252 million was terminated. And these were funds that were actually allocated for training, which were not used up. So I think for now, and I listened to the CEO, she was so passionate about us wanting to upskill. I mean, if we let go of 250 million, one could think that we're probably not serious about upskilling our sector. So I think we should try and use that up. And if you look at what we allocated in the 1920, we allocated 359. But look at how much we disbursed. We only disbursed about 203 million. So if you add up what you actually was approved and the opening balance, you've only disbursed 14%. The same way with the 2020-2021, we had terminations of about 122 million. And when you look at what we only disbursed 129 million. And the reason why we're not disbursing, it's either we don't get documents, it's either we don't get documents that mostly that are compliant, because at times you have this grant claim forms completed, but it's not completed correctly. At times you find the stakeholder claiming for 20 learners, and these learners had names, remember, when they were registered, but now she's claiming for other learners that were not registered. So it always delays the payment. And when you look at the current financial year, we started at 697. Yes, I indicated here, you can see that when we started with the presentation, we had only received contract worth 2.2 million, but at least now I can safely say that it's sitting at 60 million now, this figure. On the terminations part, I have indicated that we will terminate if stakeholders are not going to come forward to claim the 114 million. These are all those learners that are behind schedule. This will be terminated at the end of the financial year. And if you look at what we've paid this year, we've only paid about 163 million. Our target was to pay over 300 million. And I think the CEO did indicate that, please, if you can submit, help us. It's easy to pay. We can pay 200 million before end of March. And that's what we want to do. All you have to do is to make sure that you submit documents timeously and that they are approved and everything is in order. And in that case, as the SETA, we would then disburse those funds to stakeholders. So as you can see, we're hoping that the ratio will increase, but we're hoping to at least disburse 45% of what we have to disburse. Next slide, Makate. And then the issue of the commitment register as well. Maybe it's also important that stakeholders understand the challenges that we always come across with. And I think I have indicated lack of submission of contracts and learner agreements. CEO spoke about that earlier. My wish now is to ask each and every stakeholder who's got a contract who's not submitted, who's got enrollment forms that have not been submitted, to please submit those so that we can process them. We have to process all these in the commitment register. We have to commit all these funds failing which we may have a problem where we now unable to commit these funds, because you need a contract to commit these funds, and that contract must have the start and end date. So those learners that are behind schedule, you have to approach the SETA, ask for extension, and obviously they will, in some cases, I'm sure there are extreme circumstances that would allow the SETA to give you extension. But normally, as I said, for a skills program that started in the 18-19 financial year, I think it would be difficult for one to get extensions. So insofar as uncompleted programs as well, I have indicated that once you submit enrollment forms, as is our policy, once we register the learners, what we would then do would make sure that we pay the first tranche. Once we've paid that first tranche, the assumption from the SETA's point of view is that training will begin. But as I said earlier, you would find that you had submitted 100 enrollment forms, but only training for 50 would then begin. But when we have paid the first tranche as the SETA, we would then request you to actually pay back the amount of the learners that have not started with the program. And I think I can just tell you that even last year alone, I think we recovered about 5.4 million from stakeholders whom we had paid tranches and did not implement the program. So it is important that stakeholders implement the project as written in the contract. Next slide. And again, maybe I just need to advise the stakeholders, some of the challenges that we come across insofar as paying is concerned. We at times the stakeholder would submit a grant claim form that is not signed, and they would want it to be paid. You find that as finance, we have a checklist. We have to ensure that all the documents are compliant. So if this is not signed, it will have to go back to the stakeholder to get it signed. And then I have spoken about the changing of learners in the system without following the right processes. This also delays some of the tranche payments that you always have to make. There is also this issue, and I think Louis did touch on the external moderations. You may find that a stakeholder has completed the training, but it does not approach the SETA to request that moderations be done so that these learners can be exited. So we request that once training is done, approach the SETA so that the SETA can appoint an external moderator who would then come up with a report so that we can exit all these learners. The main other one as well, it's the wrong bank details. We still have issues with wrong banking details. We are sitting with monies for stakeholders, especially in the mandatory grant, where stakeholders have submitted wrong banking details. We go back, we ask them to resubmit. When we try and pay, it comes back from the bank. So our request is that please just make sure that when you submit the banking details that they are all correct. And then the other one obviously is the late or non-submission of learner enrollment forms. Just by not submitting learner enrollment forms, if you were awarded 100, you don't submit the enrollment forms, it means that we can't register. It means that we have to cancel. And remember, as I indicated, and I think some of the stakeholders in other provinces complain about not giving the numbers that you want. You may find that a stakeholder applied for 100, but as the SETA, we only gave them 70 because that's all we could afford. We could only afford to award 70% of what was needed. But you can just imagine that as a stakeholder, if you don't use up this, there are other stakeholders who are actually using up their 100%. But because we're trying to be fair, we try and apply a formula that would ensure that everybody's fair. Now it becomes unfair to those who implement fully, those who does not implement and still get the numbers. And I think going forward as the SETA, we would also be looking at the history of implementation from the stakeholder point of view, because it is definitely unfair, and most of the stakeholders were not happy that they implement fully, but we never give them the full complement. So to those who have not been implementing, my ask today is for them to please, if we can just make sure that we implement and then we submit all the documentation that is needed. So I think for me, as my closing part again is, as the CEO said, we are not a banking institution. We don't want to have R1 billion in the bank account. We are sitting with 114 million for 18-19. We're sitting with 128 million for 1920 financial year. We're sitting with 279 for 2020-21. But these funds have been allocated to stakeholders. Stakeholders, all they need to do is to ensure that they implement, they follow all the processes, and once they submit those grant claim forms, these funds would be dispersed to them. So we are requesting stakeholders to please assist us in reducing this bank balance, in upskilling the people in our sector. Yeah, I think that was my closing part. That's my email address. I think if there are any issues with payments, to be honest, from finance side, we've not had those many issues, because in finance, once everything is complete, we actually pay. We pay according to government. Our terms are 30 days. We actually pay. We always pay within 30 days. We pay within 7 days. If your documents, if they are complete, they can be paid as soon as we get them in finance. So I think my plea is that let's submit the documents, let's pay all those tranches, those learners that are behind schedule, approach the SETA, find out what's happening, inform us so that we can know exactly, because maybe you may find that some of the learners have been terminated, but we have not terminated them as the SETA. And these are funds we could be using for other special projects and strategic partnerships. So if there are any queries from finance, my email is there. There is also a financial manager, and we also have 2 administrators who are always happy to assist. Thank you very much. I will take questions and comments.
Mr. P, a question is coming.
Good day, Mr. Pierre. It's Gerald Griffiths here. So I would just like to know, in terms of your 2021 and 2021-22, what you're saying is that you're still waiting for contracts to come in. I believe then that no one had told you that there was a delay and people had problems with the system of capturing and all those things. That is the one thing that I want to say. You know, also, I don't hear you saying or you mentioning anything about 2019, 2020, when we deal with COVID. You know, companies had to stop, providers had to stop, and especially within the fishing industry, it's very complicated because people had to go out to sea. The learners had, especially when you work with employed learners, you know, companies at that time, when they catch fish, the learners need to work at that time because the companies had stopped for a while. So those, especially within the fishing industry. So, but I hear what you're saying, and my last question would be, in terms of, maybe you can tell us now, you give us a lot of figures. What is your figure that you set out for the special projects? Thank you.
Maybe to start with the last one. In the 2020-2021 financial year, we approved 102 million of strategic partnerships. And then in the current financial year, that figure is sitting at around 100 million. So I think that, and remember, it is always based, when we do our budget for strategic partnerships, we actually don't budget for strategic partnership. We budget for all the other learning programs that we fund as the SETA. But if there are cancellations, if we have terminations, if we have any extra funding, this is when we make money available to strategic projects. Already, like I told you now, there is a potential 114 million that may become available. We know that we have now we're closing the date for applications on the 28th. So obviously by the 28th, we will have an indication as to what could be available. When we do the evaluation, in most cases, these funds will now become available. So insofar as those programs that are behind, I think I did indicate what is important is communication. You know that if COVID affected you that much, then you approach the SETA so that the SETA is able to make an assessment and decide, you know, that they will then allow you an extension. Because I can tell you now that you may find that some of these learners have been terminated. But if they are terminated again, it's important that the SETA is notified so that we can make these funds available for other projects. So we do understand that there was COVID, there's still COVID. And what we also do, we've had stakeholders that approached us that requested the extensions, and we looked at them. We know the artisans that it takes, I mean, for an artisan to qualify, it takes, you know, almost more than 4 years. In that case, we would not take away the funding for artisans because we are aware of the processes that have to be followed there. So what we are asking is that let's make sure that the data that the stakeholders got and the one that FoodBev has got, you know, is the same. It can't be that when we do monitoring, we get there, you find that these learners, we are told the learners are not there, they left, they were terminated. But there was never ever any communication to the SETA, because if we have paid a tranche, by the way, remember that we would then invoke a grant recovery as the SETA, because you did not implement, we paid you to implement a program which you did not. Thank you very much.
Hello. I was wondering, with all the surplus, I mean, I would like to get 1 million, but I was wondering, with all the surplus, does the SETA not consider funding small businesses in the food sector, like your hawkers and your street vendors, given the unemployment youth rate that we have as a country, and given what we have gone through with Corona, which has, of course, increased the unemployment rate?
I think Mr. Mgiri can also maybe respond to that one. But what I know from funding point of view is that, you know, funding of SMEs, it's definitely one of our strategic prerogative to fund. And we always do our best to try and fund. And I must be honest, and I may be wrong from where I'm sitting, you know, the appetite has not been as much as one would expect it to be. So I'm happy to hear, you know, a person like you talking about funding. Maybe you may be even having a project that we probably can partner with the SETA, you know, where we then maybe create employment, and then, you know, and in that we are growing the economy. So I think maybe in that Mgiri, I'm sure on this one, because from funding point of view, I think he spoke to SMEs as well, and the CEO spoke to that SMEs.
Is it my turn now to talk? Okay.
Please stand.
Am I talking to Mr. Pule? All right. Thank you, Mr. Pule, for your delivery. I think I introduced myself yesterday. The question I was going to have, I think at the end you actually answered that question, because it was going to be asking why, when these allocations are made, are you not checking the profile of the delivery of that particular applicant? So you got to answer it in the end, so there's no need for that question. Maybe, yes, maybe you just need to know that it was going to be there, but you answered in the process. It was actually very concerning last year in that roadshow, where we were shown the amount of programs that are left not complete. And I remember I raised the question, maybe I'm still going to ask for that clarity, because there's always been a notion that you are the service provider from FoodBev. I don't know you. I have little to do with you. And this actually would then manifest itself in this situation, because if you say you don't know me, you accredited me, you licensed me, Do you understand that I run to the deep day and night to make sure that you've got all this money to be dispersed to the relevant people? Because most of the employers and most of the stakeholders are not aware. I'm not talking about I in person, I'm talking the capacity of the service provider. Your job is to make awareness on behalf of Food Bevsita. You are the middleman. And the reason why this was actually formulated in the beginning, accreditation, is because you'll be able to reach those people at the far end that you're not able to reach. And now here's the situation. You are told, we don't know you, we do not have a contract with you, we can't talk to you. You're fortunate if you can be spoken to. You're very fortunate. This is what I know from last time. Because then you told, sorry, let me just remove my mask. The employer is the one we talk to, we do not know you. And allow me to say, please go back to the drawing board, because this is what made some of the sitters to fare badly, because of not recognizing the key person who's the driver behind this. But if you go to other sitters that really recognize that the key person here is a service provider who drives this program, then you'll also see the success of their delivery. Keeping in mind that, yes, there are those who are having a very bad profile, but you've got obviously what you call rules according to the profile of delivery. Everywhere there are codes of conduct. So if you're going to have 1 or 2 or 3 service providers who did not fare well in terms of integrity, in terms of delivering what they ought to be, and you blanket everyone, and you don't talk to everyone, you only talk to the employer, hence we'll be sitting with this money that's not actually dispersed to that. So that at the end of the day, another thing that I would like to bring to your attention is we can deliver to the employer. And maybe if you have to sit with us and see the frustrations that sometimes we go through. You can pay the employer. The employer can stay 6 months with the funds in the account, not transferring the amount to you. We did ask, is there no way you can have a direct agreement between the employer, the service provider, and the sitter, that once the moderation is done, exit is done successfully, and the employer is happy? Can you not transfer the funds straight to the service provider who provided the service? And then there's always that, no, I do not know you, so therefore I cannot. But when you upload, definitely you are going to want my documentations, and the success of that application is going to be based on that. You see what I mean? So I'm sure in all what I'm trying to say here is, those are the things that need to be visited again, so that you can be able to have that situation where now you've got a successful delivery. Programs that you have given, they are completed on time, because this is actually a disarmament where you're going to be waiting and phoning the employer. When are you paying us? We are aware that you've been paid with SITA, and it's 3 months down the line, the employer is just sitting there ignoring you after having done the services. So if you were considering the service provider being at the forefront driving these programs, I'm telling you, 2 years down the line, we're sitting here, you'll be saying something better than what you are saying in terms of frustration of the funds that are locked in here and there and there. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the comment is noted, and I think the CEO is also there. I think definitely management would look into the input that you made. Thank you for that.
Just to add to what Mr. P is saying, or we call him Mr. P, Mr. Bule, from a communication of stakeholders perspective, this is one of the platforms where we're reaching out. Yes, the pandemic was a bad hit on everyone, right? It was not the greatest of time. It was one of those confusing times for everyone. But be that it may, it still doesn't stop us from doing what, as a CETA at least, we're supposed to be doing. And the learnings from that is, yes, we need to communicate harder. And we thought we were, but now when we look back, we're like, maybe we could have done more. So there is, conversations in place to make sure that we reach as many stakeholders as possible. We are acquiring services of a bigger marketing agency to assist us with external communication that will reach, other stakeholders in other parts of the country. Reach has always been an issue. One of the key strategic deliveries or deliverables that we are looking at, adopting this year is the opening of satellite offices, like really small. We're not looking at a building, somewhere in the city of Cape Town, but somewhere where you can be able to interface with a coordinator when you want to submit paperwork and you're battling to do that. They could help you where we say to you, go to a site somewhere, as opposed to our, to other organs of state, like, your CEDAs or your CFLAs. I mean, CEDA is everywhere. We are unfortunately not able to have that size of presence, with a CEDA. But we are addressing some of those issues, and reach, we have seen it as a main issue, and we've got a mitigating strategy for that. It still doesn't stop you when you are having those issues to call someone. Like the CEO said, it gets really busy, and now there is a stakeholder relations committed, body rather in the building that will assist as quick and as much as we can with addressing some of these issues. And remember that we're dealing with over 4,000 levy-paying companies. And out of that, yes, we also see that, the percentage of companies, or rather entities or stakeholders that engage with us, is 18%. And we're saying to them, please come back. Where's the 82? Because there's this money that needs to be dispersed. And out of that, over 700 are active participants in our WSP programs. So there is more work that we are doing on the ground to move this commitment register, but we are saying to you, because you have been capacitated, be the first ones to help us get the word out there and help us move these funds. Again, we're not a banking institution. We're not allowed to keep this money. And hence, in the spirit of transparency, we also showed you the numbers of what's really going on in our bank account. And I'm hoping that brings comfort. And we're not here, we're not being defensive, we're just telling you the truth as it is, or as it sits currently. So, are we happy? Cape Town, are we happy? Yes.
Sylvia on the line.
Yes. What do you want to say, Mr. P?
I was saying that Sylvia, I think she's got her hand up.
Is there a question?
Yeah,
online?
there's a question. Yeah.
Okay, the person that's asking the question online, they can unmute themselves, then we can hear what the question is.
Hi, thanks. Makaseng, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blue. Thank you very much. I enjoyed your presentation. I thought it was very, very useful. There's just two things I'd like to make here. The first one, I can hear this, so I'll try and speak slowly. The first point is, when you think someone is behind, when you believe a learner is behind schedule, please make sure that you go to your admin people to find out whether that person really is behind schedule or whether there's an admin problem. I speak from my personal experience, so that's just a tip to you. But my request to you, please, when you send out that document that is the payment, you send us a document saying the SETA has made payment, but it doesn't come, it comes with a tiny reference number that I can't always work out. So if you have a few interventions that you've got running, and of course there's mandatory grants as well, it can sometimes be difficult to understand what it is you're actually making payment for, because things are crossing over, in the various payments you're making. So if you could improve in the software some clarification of what exactly you're paying for, that would be really, really helpful.
Mr. P, did you catch that?
Thank you.
Unmute yourself, Mr. P.
Yeah, no, I said we note that, but again, it would have been I think, beneficial to maybe try and understand what kind of reference would we use?
Hi, I understand your question. Yes. So if it's simply said to us, intern, it's your first tranche, or intern, it's your second tranche, or it's the 20% mandatory grant. So it's just some small thing that leads us, because if you've got a few learnerships and skills programs and interns, you can see how that could cross over in the timing. They're all in the same year. And now, what exactly is being paid for in that lump sum? I've had this experience where a lump sum arrives, and I have to sit there trying to work out mathematically what combination can that be. So it would be really helpful if it just said this tranche, first tranche, continuing tranche, whatever it is. Does that? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. We just have to engage. Remember, even with us, there may be limitations, especially when, you find that you've got 3 programs running in different funding windows, and you want to know this is for this particular funding window. You want to know whether it's first tranche and second tranche. But it is something that we'll investigate and see how we can try and improve on it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, any more questions from Mr. P before we let him go? His email is mkhubudip@foodbev, mkhubudip@foodbev.co.za. He responds very quickly, and he's saying there is money in the bank. And in the words, quoting our CFO verbatim, there is money. Mr. Magugu Mapiwa has said that. So please, let's move this money. There is money. I'm quoting the CFO right now. He is listening and has been quoted verbatim. And then on that note, thank you, Mr. P. We're going to welcome Usamgelisiwe Pungula, who's going to be presenting on, please bring the thing, who's going to be presenting on monitoring and evaluation and how we conduct our due diligence. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you see me? My name is Samkilisiwe Pungula. I'm the Manager Monitoring and Evaluation at FoodBev CETA. I will be speaking to you today about site visits, including our due diligence site visits, and then I will share contact details for the Monitoring and Evaluation Unit. So with the due diligence site visits, discretionary grants are advertised and contracted with stakeholders. The qualifying applicants are then evaluated and recommended by various FoodBev CETA committees. FoodBev will then enter into projects through partnerships or MOUs with the various entities. This is when the due diligence is conducted by FoodBev CETA. Okay, so the due diligence site visits verify whether learner information is concise, whether a training venue or equipment is available. It verifies verification of OHS, occupational health safety equipment or processes that comply to OHS requirements. The due diligence also checks or verifies that there is a record-keeping system, policy and procedure that is available. The due diligence will also verify ability to adhere to FoodBev reporting requirements and to also verify learner contracts and SLAs. So the importance of site visits is that they are integral in performance management because they provide the opportunity to learn about implementation of projects. Foodbev CETA will conduct site visits to monitor interventions and to provide warning signs and risks of implementation of programs. Site visits are also conducted to provide an opportunity for Foodbev CETA to learn how stakeholders and beneficiaries experience Foodbev CETA interventions. The site visits are also conducted as an opportunity to collect data to answer evaluation questions relating to relevance of programs, sustainability of programs, and effectiveness of Foodbev CETA learning programs. So in terms of the site visit process flow, the site visits are conducted after contracting is done with employers. The commitment register is also utilized. So we also look at the commitment register when we conduct site visits. So we will also conduct site visits to, as Mr. Pule mentioned earlier, if there are learners behind schedule, we will look at that and try to visit those companies to see how we can assist. The site visit will be set up with the contracted stakeholder. Confirmation of appointment for site visits will be done. However, Foodbev CETA may also conduct unconfirmed site visits as well. And then just a special request as well is that we request that employers grant access to Foodbev CETA employees or our moderators when we do conduct site visits. So we'd like to access where the learners are hosted. Then our site visit entails verification of learners by either a physical or virtual interface. So normally we normally do the physical site visits, but Foodbev CETA is also looking into virtual site visits as well. The site visits will also include verification of stipend payments. So we would like to see the payroll sheets. We'd like to just verify that learners are being paid the correct stipends. We would also like to interview learners as well as training providers just on the general implementation of the learning program. So we do request employers to just ensure that the learners as well as training providers are available during the site visit. Once the site visit is completed, a site visit report is then produced, which will then be shared with the employer just to confirm the site visit. The employer may be requested to submit an implementation plan if there are any areas that would require addressing by the employer. If recommendations identified are not implemented to Foodbev CETA's satisfaction, Foodbev CETA may request that the training discontinue. So if Foodbev CETA or our moderators as well conduct a site visit, and it so happens that there's a particular finding, or maybe the employer is not training as per the implementation plan, then we would then request that training maybe just to stop until the employer can address any recommendations that were addressed by Foodbev CETA. Then in conclusion, the due diligence site visits are conducted before awarding a grant. Our site visits are conducted if and when a need arises, and our external moderators may also conduct site visits as well as the due diligence site visits on behalf of Foodbev CETA. And then in conclusion, I will just share the contact details of the Monitoring and Evaluation Unit. Previously, some of you may have known the Monitoring and Evaluation Unit as part of Quality Assurance Department. However, we are now part of the Research Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Department. So we are now led by Ms. Nokuthula Sibiya, who is the Senior Manager, Research Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. You have myself as the Manager, Monitoring and Evaluation, and we've currently got 2 coordinators, which is Ms. Linda Mdlogolo and Mr. Samuel Manamela, and these are the contact details for the Monitoring and Evaluation team. That is the end of my presentation. I'll take any questions, if there are any. Thank you.
I'm going to use this. Okay, Ms. Samu got elevated today. There's a question there, Samu, from the gentleman. So Velangala, wanna come back?
That's quite informative, but I have a bit of an issue with your unconfirmed site visits. I can tell you in my space, that would be a bit of a problem. But sometimes you cannot identify people coming into the building or wherever the site is, unidentified. It could be a security problem. We are sitting somewhere in the building and then you're coming to say, I'm from Food Bev, I'm here to do site visits, whatever you were doing there, monitoring or your evaluation. I'm not sure what's the objective there. But if we are credible and you know us as suppliers, just tell us we're coming, then we'll make things easier for you. Because there's competition out there. I don't want to expose myself to a person who claims, there's a lot of scams out there, who claims to be coming from the CETA. I want to find out they're there to steal my programs or whatever I'm doing there. So I've got a bit of issue with that one because we have security reasons for that. So I don't know how you can go around explaining that one to me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. Your comment is noted. We do schedule mostly all of our site visits. We've never really conducted one where we've never confirmed a site visit. However, it's important for stakeholders to know that if the need arises, we may just knock at the door.
Do we need clarification on that? If the need arises, we may just knock on the door. Someone has laid down the law. Right. Okay, so thank you very much. Lunch will be served after this. The CEO is going to come and close this event for us and help us bid you farewell until we see you, our friends, again. Just to promote, the AGM is happening this year. We will be sending out communication on time. We're confirming final details. And I'm looking at the sir over there. I know he's going to be coming to the AGM, because he said wherever we are, he will be there. So CEO, thank you very much, everyone. Lunch will be served in the foyer. In the restaurant, my apologies, I keep saying the foyer. You don't need the steps.
I don't. Good afternoon, is it afternoon now? Is it? Oh yeah, it's 1:30. Basically now I have to close and say thank you. But before I say that, maybe just to add to the gentleman's concern, we understand that there are scammers, there are people who might pretend to be from Foodbev SETA. Our employees, probably most of them, if not all, have got some form of identification. And we normally, when we come to you, will be on our uniform, like we are, as you can see how we dressed. So this is not fruitless and wasteful expenditures for us to be able to be identified by anyone and everyone that you come from Foodbev SETA. Random site visits won't necessarily happen all the time because we don't think you've got ghost employees. However, we will confirm with you your availability because there's no point of us leaving Joburg to Cape Town and find that there's no one at the building or the factory is closed, whatever the case might be. Where we do random is because maybe there's an issue that has been raised through our systems, whether it's whistleblowing systems or other systems. But normally, site visits will happen with communication with you and you agreeing on the dates and times to be there when we conduct a site visit, same as a due diligence process. So those will be communicated to you via email or phone calls. I'm not sure which process they use. So I hope that gives you a little bit of comfort that we're just not going to pitch without letting you know, not unless there is a problem. So I thank you so much. I see they've written Baya Danke. Unfortunately, I can't speak Afrikaans to save myself, so I'm not even going to try. Thank you very much. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Thank you for being such a good crowd and asking all the relevant questions. I hope that this was worthwhile to you as it was to us. And I hope most of the questions that you've raised, whether in private or here at the platform that you've been given, were eloquently responded to. I'm hoping to see you soon. Some of the visits we do on a one-on-one basis. Some of you have met personally through the years, and others I haven't. So if you wish for us to come and meet you, see the learners, see your factory, see how it works, because sometimes it really helps. In fact, not sometimes, most of the times, it helps for us to come to your factories to understand the back end of what's going on with your learners, because we might make decisions based on what we think we know, not what we really know. And I say this, and that some of the things, when we look at them or request and applications, we view them with an outside view in terms of that, you know, this company only has 10 employees, but they are applying for 300 learners. How are they going to place these learners? How are they going to mentor these learners? How are they going to supervise these learners? But if we get to the factory and realize maybe that these 300 learners will be in the factory, there is a good balance of mentor and learner ratio, and maybe you need packers, maybe you need whatever it is that you need, but we do not know that because we're evaluating on the basis of what we know without really being inside the factory. So sometimes it helps for you guys to invite us, invite my team to come and have site visits and see what you do and the good work you do, and also just to meet the learners. So don't be shy in terms of inviting my team. We will come and visit you. If you invite us, but there are situations where we will just ask to come and see you. And that's what monitoring and evaluation does. So I really, really thank you. You've been a good audience. And after this, we're going to Joburg. We always like coming to Cape Town. It's such a nice warm city with its very moody weather. Like in the morning we woke up, it was nice and sunny. Now it's gray. Now I don't know what it's going to be later. But by then we will have flown back to Joburg because we're leaving today. But thank you so much. And lunch is served on us until we see you again. This time we're not coming to Cape Town for the AGM, so you'll meet us virtually. We will be in Joburg. We invite you to join us in Joburg. It's lovely there. Thank you.